Chapter 1682. Song Qing-shu trod on the water the entire way. By the time he reached River Tomb City, the sky was already dark. Even with his profound cultivation, running such a long distance was still unbearably tiring. The plains from my previous life are still the best. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but miss the days when he could leisurely fly across half the country in 2 hours. He observed from a small hill outside the city. Most of the Jin's tents were stationed outside the city. He secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Although the Jin soldiers were definitely stationed in the city, most of them were outside the city to minimize the impact on the people. After resting for a while and recovering his energy, Song Qing-shu entered the city. This wasn't his first time coming to Jiangling City. He couldn't help but sigh at the nostalgia. The last time he came here was when he had just transmigrated to this world, and it was when he was at his lowest. With Icy Snow's help, he met Dingdian here and learned the divine reflection scripture. It was also the first time he saw the beautiful Huang Rong. I wonder if Rong has heard news about Guijing. I hope it won't affect her pregnancy. Thinking of her round belly, a gentle smile flashed across Song Qing-shu's face. However, he quickly collected his thoughts. Jiangling was currently in a state of war. It was fine during the day, but there would be a curfew at night. If he delayed any longer, he wouldn't be able to find anyone to ask for directions. Although he knew Qi Feng's current address, he wasn't very familiar with Jiangling City. He might not be able to find the specific street. After knocking on a few doors, he finally got the location of Qi Feng's residence under the lure of silver. He hid under the cover of the night from the patrolling Jin soldiers and finally found Qi Feng's residence. I wonder how she's been all this time. An image of a young married woman in tears appeared in his mind. Song Qing-shu sighed inwardly. Qi Feng really had a hard life. Her childhood sweetheart was separated by a conspiracy, and she was unknowingly married to the murderer of her father. The only senior brother who loved and cared for her in the world also died a violent death. I hope my appearance can change her fate. At the very least, she can live a happier life for the rest of her life. Song Qing-shu suddenly stopped and frowned as he looked at the courtyard house not far away. Although this courtyard was not big, it was very unique and had all the necessary facilities. After all, Qi Feng was the young mistress of the Wan clan and the former granddaughter-in-law of the prime minister's family. In addition, Song Qing-shu had sent his subordinates to escort her back and had also brought a lot of interrogations, so it was not surprising that she lived in such a courtyard. The reason why Song Qing-shu frowned was because his inner breath detected the presence of more than one man in the courtyard. Of course, he did not let his imagination run wild. He knew Qi Feng's character. She was a very loyal and traditional woman. Of course, what happened between them was an accident. She would never invite a man into the house in the middle of the night. Besides, there were more than 1 or 2 men in the house. Did something happen to her? Song Qing-shu thought of something and quickly snuck in. There were hidden guards at the entrance of the courtyard. He was worried that he would alert the enemy and bring danger to Qi Feng, so he did not force his way in. Instead, he silently slid to the roof of the house in the middle and decided to observe the situation first. Tell me, where is the city-linking incantation? At this moment, a somewhat familiar voice suddenly came from below. City-linking incantation? Song Qing-shu was stunned. So they're here for the city-linking incantation. Why does this person's voice sound so familiar? He was puzzled. He untied the tile and saw a middle-aged man with bags as big as an old man standing there. It was Ling Tusi, the magistrate of Jiangling whom he had interacted with years ago. So, what's this vicious guy? Song Qing-shu did not have a good impression of him. In the original work, he buried his daughter alive for the treasure. In this world, Song Qing-shu was almost tricked by him. I really don't know what the city-linking incantation is. At this moment, a panicked and pitiful voice came from the other side. Song Qing-shu could tell that it was Qi Feng's voice. He changed his angle and looked down. As expected, he saw Qi Feng kneeling on the ground, hugging her daughter tightly in her arms. Her face was full of tears. Seeing her like this, Song Qing-shu's expression turned cold. He was about to help when he suddenly saw two people sitting on the other side. Why is it him? He saw a man with a strange appearance. His eyebrows were tilted to the left, and he looked like a flying god. It was the snow beggar, Wu Liuqi, whom he had met once in Jiangling. The slightly plump man beside him looked kind, but he could not recognize him. Why is Wu Liuqi with Ling Tusi? Song Qingshu was puzzled. Back then, Wu Liuqi thought that Meng Yinxing had died in the hands of Ling Tusi and even tried to assassinate him. However, what puzzled him even more was the attire of Wu Liuqi and the slightly plump man beside him. There was something familiar about them. The slightly plump man was wearing a golden robe, the attire of a rich family member, which matched his temperament quite well. Wu Liuqi, on the other hand, was wearing a dark green robe, which matched his killing aura very well. Song Qingshu thought for a long time and finally came to a realization. Their clothes were the same as Zhang San and Li Si's. He felt a chill in his heart. He did not think that this was a coincidence, especially when he thought of the legendary messengers of the Isle of Chivalry, who rewarded good and punished evil. Apart from Zhang San and Li Si, who were well known in Jianghu, there were also Zhao De, Qian Er, Friday Zhou, Wu Lu, Zheng Qi, and Wang Ba. Among these 8 people, Zhao De and Qian Er stood out. Be it their identity or their martial arts, they were extremely mysterious. So far, no one knew their true identities. The remaining Zhang San, Li Si, Wu Lu, Zheng Qi, and Wang Ba were of the same level. The 6 of them were similar in terms of martial arts and status on the Island of Chivalry. As for the messengers of the Island of Chivalry, they were of a different level. Song Qingshu had encountered a dozen or so messengers from the Isle of Heroes in that rundown temple. Although those messengers were powerful, they lacked experience and wisdom in facing enemies. It was obvious that they had relied on medicines and secret manuals to build up their strength. That was why Song Qingshu had been able to defeat them so easily despite being outnumbered. It was obvious that those messengers were ranked lower than the rest. If Song Qingshu had been up against messengers from the Isle of Heroes like Zhang San and Li Si, who were experienced in the martial world and had been through countless battles, it would have been a fierce battle. Zhang San, Li Si, Wu Lu. Song Qingshu thought that Wu Liuqi's name was very similar to Wu Lu's, and his clothes were similar to Zhang San and Li Si's. He was almost certain that Wu Liuqi was now a member of the Island of Chivalry and ranked 6th among the messengers of the Island of Chivalry. The little plump man next to him was most likely Friday. How did the people of the Island of Chivalry get involved? After realizing this, Song Qingshu decided to observe the situation first. After all, Qi Feng was not in any danger for the time being. At this time, Wu Liuqi heard Qi Feng's words and could not help but snort. You are Qi Changfa's daughter and Wan Jinshan's daughter-in-law. How could you not know where the city linking technique is? Feeling the coldness in his tone, Song Qingshu frowned. Although Wu Liuqi was the eagle claw of the Qing dynasty in history, he was a man of indomitable spirit in the Golden Book world. It was not his style to bully orphans and widows like this. Did he change after entering the Island of Chivalry? Or did he hate Qi Changfa and Wan Jinshan for killing his senior brother, Meng Yinxing? I really don't know what the city linking technique is. I have never heard my father or my father-in-law mention it. This is the first time I have heard it from you, Qi Feng explained in vain. The daughter in her arms seemed to have sensed her mother's panic and could not help but burst into tears. It seems that you will not shed a tear until you see your coffin. Ling Tusi laughed sinisterly. He snatched the baby from her arms and raised it high. If you don't tell me, I will fall down. No, Qi Feng screamed. She struggled and wanted to rush over, but she was restrained by her subordinates. She could not do anything. Song Qingshu's heart turned cold. Ling Tusi did not even blink when he killed his own daughter. He would not hesitate to kill someone else's daughter, even if it was a baby. He secretly raised his hand. Just when he was about to rush down to save his daughter, he suddenly heard someone shouting, "Found it! Found it!" As he spoke, he raised a book called Selected Poems of the Tang Dynasty. It turned out that when Ling Tusi and the others interrogated Qi Fong, he had sent his subordinates to search through the house. Ling Tusi was overjoyed. He threw the water spinach back into Qi Fong's arms. UB*TCH, you dare to say that you don't know about the city linking technique? Qi Fong hurriedly held her daughter in her arms. She looked at the book in his hands and asked in confusion, "Isn't this the selected poems of the Tang dynasty?" Playing dumb? Ling Tusi's expression turned cold. However, Wu Liuqi stopped her. "It seems that she doesn't know about it." Ling Tusi nodded. "With how cunning Qi Changfa and Wang Jinshan are, it is possible that they did not tell her. But we will not be able to find out about the secret of the city linking technique, will we?" As he spoke, he became exasperated. He even glared at Qi Fong. She was so frightened that she hugged her daughter tightly. "That may not be the case." Wu Liuqi pointed at the man in yellow. "My brother is an expert in this field." Ling Tusi's vision blurred. The book was already in the hands of the man named Friday. He could not help but feel a chill in his heart. The martial arts of these people from the Isle of Heroes are really unfathomable. Song Qing-shu, who was on the roof, nodded to himself. Friday's kung fu was indeed not bad, but there was nothing to be surprised about. Friday read the selected poems of the Tang dynasty and said, "If you want to hide the secret, you have to use interlayers, special potions, or use some code words in the plain text." He flipped through the book and quickly shook his head. "There is no interlayer." Then he took each page and heated it over the candle flame. He then shook his head. "It's useless to heat it with fire." Then he calmly brought the page to his nose and sniffed it. Apart from the smell of ink, there is also a faint, strange smell. As he spoke, he laid the page on the table. He then took out a chopstick and dipped it in some water. He gently scraped the page. Ling Tusi and Wu Liuqi's attention was drawn to him. Suddenly, Ling Tusi shouted in surprise, "A number has appeared!" Through the gaps between the people, Song Qing-shu could vaguely see the word for appear in the blank space on the side of the book. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. It looks like the secret of the city link incantation can no longer be kept. Then, Friday continued to organize the book. Soon, he found all the hidden numbers in the book. Ling Tusi frowned and said, "It's useless to just know these numbers. There are so many words in the book. I don't know where to use them, nor do I know the order." Wu Liuqi smiled. "I know this. Since it is called the city linking technique, it is obviously hidden in the Lianqing swordsmanship. Every move of the Lianqing swordsmanship comes from a Tang poem. I happen to know the Lianqing swordsmanship." As he spoke, he came to the table. "The first move of the Lianqing swordsmanship comes from Du Fu's Spring Return. Here it is 4. All right, mossy path facing river bamboo. The fourth word is river. Remember it. The second move is also from Du Fu's poem. It comes from Zhao Linghum. It's 51. He continued to count. 15, 10, 15, 20. The mausoleum coils in the air. The bear guards the jade. The 51st word is mausoleum. Ling Tusi mumbled to himself, Jiangling, Jiangling. Wonderful. It is indeed in Jingzhou. It seems that my efforts in half a lifetime were not wasted. However, when he thought about how everything now belonged to the Isle of Heroes, his excitement dissipated by a large margin. Friday seemed to have read his mind. He said calmly, "If we can find Liang Yuandi's treasure this time, you will be credited. You will be rewarded." "Thank you, Saint." Ling Tusi's worries turned to joy. He quickly bowed. Wu Liuqi ignored him and continued to study. The third move of the swordsmanship comes from Chu Mo's Holy Fruit Temple. 33. 33 words. The word city in the city below is near, and the bells and chimes are mixed with songs is Jiangling City. That's right, that's right. What else is there to be suspicious about? The fourth move is 28, 15, 10, 15. The 28th word is south, Jiangling City South. Song Qing-shu naturally knew that the treasure was in the Tianning Temple. He was not surprised at all. Instead, he was even more confused. Now that the Golden Men have occupied Jiangling, why did they choose this time to retrieve the treasure? Wu Liuqi had already deciphered the remaining words. The Buddha statue in the main hall of the Tianning Temple in the Western heaven worships devoutly, communicating with the spirit of Buddha to bless and reborn in paradise. Ling Tusi was shocked. What devoutly worships devoutly, communicating with the spirit of Buddha and blessings from Buddha to reborn in paradise? Damn it, reborn in paradise. Isn't this asking people to meet the 10 Yama Kings? He thought of how he had spent most of his life investigating and even sacrificed his daughter, only to get such a result. He could not help but feel a little crazy. On the other hand, Friday was calm enough. I don't think it can be written too clearly here. The treasure is most likely hidden in the Tianning Temple. After being reminded, Ling Tusi finally recovered from his madness. That's right. The Tianning Temple has existed for hundreds of years. It has existed since the time of Emperor Liang Yuan. It is indeed possible that the treasure is hidden in it. Wu Youqi closed the book and said, "Let's go to the Tianning Temple to retrieve the treasure first. By the way, is there any news from Bei Haishu?" Hearing Bei Haishu's name, Song Qingshu could not help but be shocked. It turned out that they were in cahoots. Friday was also confused. He brought people to deal with the Ruan family. Unfortunately, there's been no news of him since then. However, I have already sent people to investigate. The Ruan family ship is still more than 100 miles away from here. They should arrive tomorrow. Ling Tusi could not help but say, "There has been no news from Dr. Bei. Could something have happened?" Friday shook his head. "It's impossible. The people that Bei Haishu brought with him are many masters. We have already investigated the guards of the Ruan family. Even if there were twice as many people, they would not be a match for them. There must be other reasons why there has been no news. We can ask him tomorrow." Wu Youqi also said, "We have to hurry up and take out the treasure from the Tianning Temple today and tomorrow. We will transport it away when the Ruan family ship arrives tomorrow." Song Qingshu, who was on the roof, finally understood what was going on. It turned out that the main reason why Bei Haishu brought people to attack Madame Ruan's fleet was because of their ship. Ling Tusi could not help but praise, "Master, you are really clever. Not only did you cut off one of Han Xingzhou's arms, but you also used the Ruan family ship to let the guards pass. Brilliant, really brilliant." Friday also could not help but laugh. After all, Han Xingzhou is now the head of all the officials, and the strength of his subordinates cannot be underestimated. Many people along the river are his direct subordinates, and they do not respect you, Master. Now that you have the Ruan family's ship, it is equivalent to having a protective talisman. Master and Minister Han have worked together to protect the ship. Who would dare to stop or inspect it along the way? Song Qingshu suddenly realized that Madame Ruan was one of Han Xingzhou's people. She must have gone to Sichuan to deal with Wu Shi's betrayal. However, Jia Shidao got the news and sent someone to kill her in advance. Then, they used her ship to transport the treasure away. In this way, the guards along the way, no matter whether they were from the Han or the Jia, would not stop them. In this way, they could transport the treasure away without anyone knowing. Moreover, he also understood that they chose to attack when the Jin soldiers were attacking Jiangling. They wanted to use the chaos to cover up the theft. If they were accidentally exposed in the future, they could blame everything on the Jin people and successfully find a scapegoat. You're really scheming. It's a pity that the plans of man are no match for the plans of God. Song Qingshu secretly felt lucky. If he had not come to visit Qi Feng on a whim, how would he have known such a big secret? Should I kill this woman first? They discussed going to the Tianning Temple to get the treasure. Ling Tusi suddenly turned around and looked at Qi Feng. There was a trace of murderous light in his eyes. Chapter 1683. As if to convince the other two, Ling Tusi added, "This woman has seen what we look like, and if this matter is spread out, it will easily bring trouble to our master." Wu Youqi frowned and said after a while, "The treasure has not been found yet. We will talk about it after we find it. In case of any accidents, leave a few people here to watch her." Song Qingshu, who was on the roof, put down his hands and did not show up at this time. He planned to wait for this group of people to find the treasure of Tianning Temple first. There were a few treasures in this world, and he knew their locations. However, he had not taken them for various reasons. He would take them out in the future when the time was right. But now it seemed that if the treasure of Tianning Temple remained here, it would be very easy to be found. It was better to use these people to take the treasure out, and then he would be the fisherman. After a discussion in the room, the people in the room quickly went out in the direction of Tianning Temple in the south of the city, leaving 2 people here to watch over Qifeng. Song Qingshu did not chase after them. Instead, he waited until they were far away before quietly descending from the roof. Before the 2 guards could react, he had already taken care of them. Qifeng was originally holding her daughter in her arms, sad and frightened. Suddenly seeing him appear in front of her, she was surprised and happy for a moment. She rubbed her eyes in disbelief and asked, "Brother Song, is it really you?" Song Qingshu wiped the tears on her face with pity and said, "I have made you suffer." Big Brother Song. Qifeng couldn't hold it in any longer. She threw herself into his arms and started crying. Okay, from now on, no one will dare to bully you." Song Qingshu didn't have the slightest desire as he hugged her curvaceous body. He only felt endless pity for her. This girl's life was too bitter. How could he let her repeat the tragedy of the original novel in this life? Qifeng finally calmed down. Only then did she realize that she had unknowingly snuggled in his arms. She was so scared that she hurriedly pushed him away. Her little face was red, and she looked very shy. Song Qingshu smiled bitterly and said, "Why do you have to be so polite?" Qifeng stretched out her fingers to tidy up the messy hair on her temples. She pursed her lips and said in a low voice, "I am a married woman after all. This is unreasonable." Song Qingshu was momentarily speechless. The Wan clan had treated her like that, but deep down, she still regarded herself as the daughter-in-law of the Wan clan. However, this was the worldview that people had formed since they were young, so he couldn't really say anything. At this time, little water spinach suddenly burst into tears. Song Qingshu hurriedly reached out and hugged her to comfort her. Feeling the tender little life in his hands, his heart was filled with tenderness. He thought that it was time for him to have a child. He wondered whose belly would move first. Speaking of which, it was strange. The little water spinach was originally crying loudly, but when it was in Song Qingshu's hands, it suddenly stopped crying. Instead, it stared at him with a pair of big eyes that were as clear as gemstones. Song Qingshu made a few faces, and she actually giggled. Her eyes suddenly became like crescent moons, and she was as beautiful as a porcelain doll. A child's laughter is the purest and most beautiful music in the world. Song Qingshu couldn't help but praise. Oh yes, let her be surnamed Song in the future. Don't let her know that she has a father like Wan Gue. Let her grow up happily and live a happy life. Qifeng was obviously a little surprised by his suggestion. She said hesitantly, I originally planned to let her follow senior brother's surname. Surname D. Song Qingshu nodded. That's right. It's good to let brother D carry the incense. He was also full of sympathy for Di Yun, so he didn't feel the slightest dissatisfaction. Qifeng didn't know about this. She was worried that he would be rejected, so she hurriedly added, "Why don't we wait for her to grow up and worship you as her godfather?" Godfather? When he thought of another meaning in the future, Song Qingshu's expression became a little strange. That's good too. Qifeng smiled from the bottom of her heart and kissed her daughter gently. Little water spinach, you'll have a very capable godfather in the future. No one will dare to bully you in the future. Song Qingshu also leaned over and touched little water spinach's nose. Little water spinach, no one will dare to bully your mother in the future. Qifeng's face turned red. She was so embarrassed that she didn't know what to say. Song Qingshu asked curiously, "Oh yes, didn't Druok teach you the main 9-yang technique?" Back on the Island of Heroes, Zhou Zhiruo had taught her the martial arts of the Ame to defend herself. She didn't know why she was still captured so easily. Sister Zhou Zhiruo did teach me. Although Qifeng was married and had a child, she subconsciously called Zhou Zhiruo her sister. But I'm too slow and I can't learn well. Moreover, Those people's martial arts are too high. Song Qing gently stroked her hair and comforted her with a smile. They're the island of heroes, envoys that reward good and punish evil. The entire Jianghu is terrified of them. It's normal that you can't beat them. As he spoke, he grabbed her hand and began to remove the restriction on her body. Now you can circulate your inner energy. Not bad. You've achieved a small success in the Mei 9 Yang technique. Of course, this small success was still a little exaggerated. After all, she was a single mother who took care of a child. She probably didn't have much energy to practice martial arts. Now, her inner energy cultivation was only slightly higher than the average Mei disciple's martial arts. Qi Fang naturally knew that he was taking care of her reputation. She lowered her head in embarrassment. Song Qingshu liked this young woman's shy look the most. His heart was moved when he saw it, and he couldn't help but move his face closer to hers. Noticing his movement, Qi Fang was shocked and instinctively shrank back. However, her waist was hugged, so she couldn't move back even if she wanted to. In the end, she couldn't keep her lips. Qi Fang's mind was in a mess. She originally planned to break up with Song Qingshu after they parted in Lin and live a life of being a good wife and teaching children. Of course, she couldn't marry him. She didn't expect that she would reunite with Song Qingshu under such circumstances. Moreover, she couldn't even bring herself to reject him. Am I a bad woman in my bones? Qi Fang was a little confused. After all, she had not experienced the baptism of openness in the future. Originally, they were in love with each other, which was a normal thing in the future. However, this world had too many harsh views on women remarrying, which made her subconsciously deny herself. Wah wah wah. At this moment, little water spinach in his arms cried. She didn't know why, but this time, Song Qingshu couldn't make her laugh even though he tried his best. Seeing the man, who had always been calm, going crazy, Qi Fang couldn't help but laugh. Who asked you to bully her mother? Humph. Then she broke free from his arms and took her daughter. What's wrong with little water spinach? After all, Song Qingshu didn't have the experience of taking care of children. He was worried that something had happened to her, so he couldn't help but panic. Nothing. I'm just hungry. Qi Fang's oval face flashed with a trace of redness. I'm hungry. What does she want to eat? It's chaotic outside now. Should I get it? Song Qingshu didn't react for a while and answered subconsciously. Qi Fang was so shy that she spat. How can you get that? Song Qingshu finally reacted. He couldn't help but slap his forehead and laughed foolishly. I'm really silly, haha. At this time, little water spinach cried even louder. Qi Fang patted her gently with distress. She wanted to take off her clothes, but hesitated. Can you go out for a while? Song Qingshu wasn't that kind of stupid scholar. How could he be so obedient? It's not like I haven't seen it before. Why are you so polite? Qi Fang's face suddenly turned red. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. She stood there feeling wronged as if she was about to cry. Song Qingshu hurriedly raised his hands. Okay. I'm afraid of you. I hate to see a woman cry the most. I'll turn my back. Okay. Qi Fang bit her lips. Then you're not allowed to peek. Song Qingshu smiled bitterly. I won't look. But he didn't take it seriously in his heart. It was really hard to understand these women's way of thinking. They obviously had the most intimate relationship, but at this time, they were guarding against each other. After a while, he heard a rustling sound coming from behind, mixed with a few strange sounds. Song Qingshu frowned and instinctively turned his head. It's the sound of little water spinach eating. Song Qingshu had no experience in this aspect before, so he felt that the sound was a little strange. But when he saw a snow-white scene, Song Qingshu couldn't move his eyes for a while. It should be known that these days, Ren Yingying was not feeling well. He had been a vegetarian monk for many days. Suddenly seeing such a scene, he couldn't help but feel his blood and hormones surging. Hey, what are you doing? Qi Fang suddenly felt that someone was hugging her from behind. She couldn't help but turn pale with fright. When she saw that it was Song Qingshu, she was relieved. Didn't you promise not to peek? Qi Fang asked angrily. I'm not peeking. Can't I do it openly? Song Qingshu said confidently. Qi Fang was suddenly speechless. Before she could react, he had already carried her horizontally. "Hey, what are you doing?" Seeing him walking to the bedside, Qi Fong was shocked. Song Qingshu whispered a few words in her ear. Her face instantly turned red. "How can I do this? Little water spinach hasn't finished eating yet. Can't you just feed it?" Song Qingshu smelled the fresh fragrance on her body and felt that his whole body was a little addicted. Qi Fong almost fainted. "How can I feed it?" Song Qingshu put her sideways on the bed and then leaned over from behind. "Isn't this fine?" Qi Fong bit her lip. At this time, a pair of almond-shaped eyes were also glistening. She whispered, "I'm really scared of you." The next morning, Song Qingshu was woken up by a baby crying. Qi Fong said to him apologetically, "Water spinach wakes up very early every morning. I'm sorry to wake you up." Looking at her messy hair that fell like a waterfall, Song Qingshu lovingly stroked her face. "Given our relationship, there is no need to be so polite." Qi Fong pursed her lips and smiled. She found that at this time her clothes were disheveled. Feeling a little embarrassed, she turned around and tidied up her clothes. Song Qingshu said, "I'm afraid it's not safe here. Moreover, there are Jin soldiers everywhere. Why don't you come with me?" Unexpectedly, Qi Fong shook her head. "I don't want to leave home. Moreover, senior brother is too lonely. If I leave, he will be lonely without anyone to accompany him." Feeling the pure love between them, Song Qingshu secretly sighed. It was a pity that fate made fools of people. The two did not end up together. Instead, they were separated from each other. "But what about your safety?" Song Qingshu was still a little worried. Chapter 1684. They should be busy moving the treasures of Tianning Temple. I'm afraid no one will be willing to come back. Song Qingshu remembered that the treasures of Tianning Temple in the original novel were coated with poison. However, this group of people from the Isle of Heroes was not the motley crew in the lynching secrets. This bit of poison would definitely not be a problem for them. Are we just going to let them take away the treasures? Qi Fong did not care about the treasures, but those people had treated her and her daughter like that. Naturally, she did not want to see the treasures fall into their hands. "Don't worry, I'm just asking them to be porters." Song Qingshu smiled slightly. Now that he was alone and had no helpers, he could not move so many treasures away. It was better to use this group of people to help move the treasures out. Anyway, they would eventually use the Ruan family's boat to move the treasures, so he was not afraid that they would disappear. "Brother Song, you should go and have a look." Qi Fong still could not let go of her worry. Compared to those people, she would certainly rather the treasures fall into the hands of Song Qingshu. "There is no hurry. I will send you back to the countryside first. It is not safe here." Qi Fong did not want to leave her hometown. Song Qingshu naturally would not force her, but he would not let her continue to stay here and take risks. "Okay." Qi Fong nodded. She also knew that this was not a place to stay for long. Even if she did not care about herself, she could not let her daughter take risks. Next, Song Qingshu sent her back to her hometown. Qi Fong was also free and easy, only bringing some essential clothes and the like. Their hometown, Ma Shipu, was not too far from Jiangling City. Song Qingshu held the mother and daughter all the way, using his lightness skill. They arrived in about an hour. Being held in his arms all the way, the feeling of riding on clouds and fog made Qi Fong fall into a trance. She could not help but sigh. "Brother Song, your martial arts are like the legendary immortals. My father, my grandfather, and the Wan family's martial arts combined are not as good as yours." Looking at her cheeks, which were as red as an apple, Song Qingshu could not help but want to take a bite. "You should practice Amei Pai's Jiuyangong. When you have achieved some success in your internal energy, I will teach you some profound martial arts. I'll practice hard." This incident had given her a wake-up call. She knew that in this chaotic world, she still needed to have enough strength to protect herself and her daughter. "But I don't know when we'll meet again." Her tone was full of reluctance to part with him. Song Qingshu could not help but hold her hand and invited her again. "Qingshu, can you come with me?" Qi Fong hesitated for a moment and shook her head in the end. "No, This is the place where senior brother and I have lived since we were young. If Big Brother Song passes by Jiangling in the future, don't forget to come and visit Little Water Spinach. Song Qing-shu had a strange expression on his face. Are you looking at Little Water Spinach or her mother? Chi Fong blushed and turned around. You are her godfather. Of course you will look at her. Song Qing-shu hugged her from behind, feeling her plump and well-proportioned body. Little Water Spinach will look at her, and so will her mother. The two of them cuddled for a while, and it was finally time to part. After saying goodbye to Chi Fong, Song Qing-shu used his lightness skill and went to Tianning Temple. When he arrived at Tianning Temple, he found that most of the treasures inside had been moved. Only the pure gold Buddha was left. The people of the Island of Heroes were trying to pack it and transport it to the dock. No wonder they chose this time. If they made such a big fuss on a normal day, it would be difficult to cover up their movements. Song Qing-shu secretly sighed. They could only make use of this chaotic time to act so that no one would notice them. He took a closer look and found that there were fewer people on the Island of Heroes than before. He knew that it was most likely due to the poison on the treasures. How long until the Ruan family ship arrives? Wu Yochi asked. Ling Tusi answered, send someone to keep an eye on them. They will probably arrive in 4 hours. Wu Yochi nodded. This Buddha is too big of a target. If it takes too long to transport it to the dock, it will inevitably attract attention. Therefore, we must calculate the time well. It will be best if the Ruan family ship arrives right after we transport it to the dock. We can ship it as soon as possible to avoid being discovered by the Jin soldiers. After a pause, he continued, is there still no news of Bei Haisher? I have a feeling that something is wrong. With Bei Haishi's group's martial arts skills, there should be no problem. Friday laughed. If you are worried, I will go to the dock to make arrangements. Wu Yochi nodded, and Friday quickly left. Song Qing-shu knew that it was a waste of time to stay there, so he quietly followed behind Friday. Although Friday was highly skilled in martial arts as the Island of Heroes messenger of rewards good and punishes evil, how could he be compared to Song Qing-shu? He had been vigilant along the way, but he did not know that there was someone tailing him. He followed Friday all the way to a warehouse at the dock and saw a group of sailors busily packing boxes. Song Qing-shu knew that these sailors were people from the Island of Heroes in disguise. Friday called one of them over and asked him to disguise himself as a fisherman to row a small boat downstream to the Ruan family ship to ask about Bei Haishi's situation. Song Qing-shu had enough information, so he quietly retreated from the warehouse and decided to return to the Mirror Lake to make preparations. He used his lightness skill all the way down the river. Of course, it was much faster than Friday's small boat. When he returned to the Mirror Lake, he found that Rin Yingying was not in the room. This was a great shock. In his heart, 10 Liang Yuandi's treasures could not compare to 1 Rin Yingying. If anything happened to her, he would probably spend the rest of his life in guilt. However, he quickly calmed down. He remembered that he had given Rin Yingying the bell of the heart-poisonous insect. If something really happened, she would inform him immediately. He hurriedly found a maid and asked. Only then did he know that Rin Yingying had been called to chat with Madame Ruan. Song Qing-shu thought that he happened to have something to ask Madame Ruan, so he went straight there. She didn't ask her when I was here, but as soon as I left, she asked her out. Is this Madame Ruan a lesbian? Song Qing-shu thought, but this thought only flashed in his mind. Stop! Before he reached, he was stopped by the guards of the Ruan family. Song Qing-shu did not feel disobedient. Madame Ruan was married, and it was indeed not convenient for men to enter the boudoir. He said, Go and tell your madam that I have something important to ask her. The guards also recognized him at this time. When they saw him that night, they thought that it was him who stopped them. They were so scared that they trembled and hurriedly smiled and said, It turns out to be Prince Song. Please wait for a moment. We will inform the madam immediately. Song Qing-shu smiled slightly and did not show any dissatisfaction, which made the guards of the Ruan family secretly admire him. It was really rare to be so approachable with such a high level of martial arts. Not long after, a maid came to greet him. Prince Song, this way please. Song Qing-shu followed her to Madame Ruan's room and saw that she and Rin Ying were chatting there. One was mature and charming, and the other was beautiful and moving. It formed a quite beautiful picture. Prince Song is back. Madame Ruan greeted with a smile. Song Qingshu was stunned. He thought that Rin Ying told her about his going out. He thought that the two had really become best friends. He did not care. Greetings, madam. After that, he came to Rin Ying's side and held her hand. Are you okay? Rin Ying smiled slightly. I'm chatting with madam. What can happen? Oh, are you afraid that I will sell your madam? Madame Ruan on the side joked. Song Qingshu smiled awkwardly. He did have this kind of worry. He always felt that this Madame Ruan was hiding too many secrets. By the way, why did I not see Payer today? At this time, a maid came to serve tea. Song Qingshu took the opportunity to change the topic. His original intention was just to change the topic. However, when Madame Ruan heard his words, her expression changed slightly. She subconsciously looked at Rin Ying. Rin Ying shook her head. She then calmed down. When we docked, I sent Payer to do something. Madame Ruan replied. Everyone had their own secrets. Song Qingshu did not ask further. Rin Ying on the side spoke in a timely manner. You are in such a hurry to find madam. Is there something urgent? There is indeed something I want to ask madam for help. Song Qingshu pondered for a long time and organized his words in his heart. I have a batch of goods in Jiangling. I want to borrow madam's ship to transport it. In fact, in his opinion, it was easy to rob the treasure. After robbing it, the matter after was a headache. Now that he was alone outside, he certainly could not transport the treasure alone. The power of the Golden Snake Camp could not reach Jiangling. He could use Tang Kuobian's identity to mobilize the Jin Kingdom's soldiers to transport the treasure. However, he did not have full control of the Jin Kingdom. If he used the Jin soldiers, this batch of treasure would certainly not be hidden. When it entered the Jin Kingdom's treasury, it would be even more troublesome to take it out for his own use. After thinking about it, the only thing he could rely on now was the Ruan family's manpower. He could use the Ruan family's ship to transport the treasure. As for where to transport it, he had not yet decided. At present, the alternative was Mount Amei. Mount Amei could be regarded as his and Zhou Zhirua's base camp. In the whole of Sichuan, there was no safer place than there. However, there was also a problem. When he needed to use it in the future, it would be inconvenient to take it. After all, the territory of Sichuan and the Golden Snake Camp could be said to be separated by more than half of China. Of course, this was all in the future. At present, the most important thing was to take the treasure from the Isle of Heroes. Goods? What goods? Madame Ruan and Rin Ying looked at each other and asked hurriedly. However, Song Qingshu did not rush to answer her question. Instead, he said meaningfully, Madam, do you know that the Ruan family will soon be faced with a disaster? Madame Ruan's expression changed. Rin Ying, who was beside her, also felt her heart skip a beat. She hurriedly said, Oh, don't keep us in suspense. Look at how scared the madam is. Hearing Rin Ying speak from Madame Ruan, Song Qingshu could not help but frown. He always felt that something was wrong, but he could not tell what it was. At this time, Madame Ruan also asked him, so he could only answer, Madam, do you know that Bei Haisher and his group had accomplices? Madame Ruan nodded. It would be strange if they did not have accomplices. Could it be that Prince Song has received some news? Chapter 1685. Hearing his words, Madame Ruan and Rin Ying's faces changed, but Rin Ying was behind Song Qingshu, so he couldn't see it. Where did you get the news? Madame Ruan asked. It doesn't matter where I got the news. What matters is whether Madame can cope with the upcoming crisis. Song Qingshu put down the teacup and said lightly. Madame Ruan was silent. The previous attack almost made Mirror Lake change owners. Moreover, after that attack, the strength of the guard was not as good as before. In the face of a stronger enemy, the result was obvious. I hope that Prince Song can lend a helping hand. Ruan family will repay you generously. After a long time, Madame Ruan looked at him with a face full of hope. Song Qingshu replied calmly, Why should I lend a helping hand? Ah, Madame Rouen was instantly dumbfounded. She opened her mouth wide and didn't know what to do for a while. Song Qing-shu frowned slightly. He felt that Madame Rouen didn't have her usual quick-wittedness and maturity today. This kind of reaction shouldn't appear on her. Rin Ying, who was on the side, helped him out. Song Qing-shu, Madame Rouen is so considerate to us. Why do you deliberately tease her like this? Song Qing-shu was also depressed. Rin Ying had ruined his show several times today. However, he had always pitied her. He only thought that she got along with Madame Rouen these days, and the two of them developed a friendship. The friendship between women is really hard to understand. Song Qing-shu shook his head secretly. Madame Rouen got the hint and finally calmed down. What orders do you have in the future? Please say it directly. Rouen family will definitely follow your lead. Follow my lead? Song Qing-shu chuckled, but was not moved. If these words were passed to Minister Han, it would be terrible. As soon as these words came out, even Rin Ying, who was on the side, suddenly changed color. Madame Rouen smiled embarrassedly. What are you saying? I don't quite understand. Madam, there is no need to quibble. You are Minister Han's subordinate. This time, I sent you to Sichuan as a secret envoy to investigate and deal with Wu Shi's betrayal. Song Qing-shu said slowly. At this point, there was no point in denying it. Madame Rouen subconsciously looked at Rin Ying and said, I don't know how young master knew all this. At this time, Rin Ying was also very depressed. She had tried her best to get close to him without hesitation. But not only did she not find anything useful, but he had found out about her first. It was truly an unprecedented loss. Song Qing-shu smiled faintly. It doesn't matter how you know all this. What matters is whether we are friends or foes. At this time, Madame Rouen also smiled sweetly. Since young master already knows our ins and outs, then dare I ask young master, are we enemies or friends? Song Qing-shu looked her up and down as if he was admiring her graceful figure. Seeing that she was avoiding his gaze, he replied, Friends. Of course we are friends. He continued, Since Madame is Minister Han's trusted aide, you are obviously not stupid. I estimate that during this period of time, you have already guessed our identity. On the side, Rin Ying nodded imperceptibly. Madame Rouen then said, May I ask if young master is Prince Qi? Since you know my identity, then you should know that I have a close personal relationship with Minister Han. We are naturally friends. Song Qing-shu laughed. Madame Rouen secretly curled her lips. Originally, they were indeed friends. However, some time ago, Golden Snake Camp's actions were strange, causing Han to suspect his intentions. They even suspected that the betrayal of Sichuan's Wu Shi was related to him. However, she did not show it on her face. Instead, she smiled like a flower. After all this time, it turns out to be Prince Qi. I have neglected you before. Madam is too polite. Song Qing-shu also returned the courtesy. Who knew that at this time? Madame Rouen suddenly opened her mouth. I have a question to ask Prince Qi. I don't know if it is appropriate to ask. In his heart, Song Qing-shu ridiculed these ancient people. They obviously wanted to ask, but deliberately said so. However, ridiculing was ridiculing. He could only follow these rules. Madam, please ask. Madame Rouen adjusted her expression and faintly looked at him. I don't know why Prince Qi is going to Sichuan at this critical moment. Song Qing-shu thought that there was nothing shameful about it. He directly said, I'm going to see what happened to Wu Shi. Hearing his blunt words, Madame Rouen and Rin Ying were both shocked. Song Qing-shu pointed to his wife and said, Madame has traveled extensively and is well informed. You should know that Ying and Wu Shi are old acquaintances. We all know his character. We know that he is not the kind of person who would betray his country for glory. Therefore, we want to see what happened to him. Madame Rouen and Rin Ying looked at each other. Obviously, they saw the shock in each other's eyes. They had been guessing the other's motives. They did not expect him to tell them so calmly. Let's not talk about other things first. Time is urgent. Why don't Madame first disguise as Bei Haisher? Song Qing-shu calculated the time. The people sent on Friday would most likely arrive soon. He did not notice the two people's eye contact. Madame Rouen was confused. Song Qing-shu explained the reason and then continued. I have long heard that Madame Ruan is an expert in disguise. Today, you can show your skill to Song Mao. I wonder if it is possible. This. Madame Ruan looked at Ren Yingying with a guilty conscience. Ren Yingying thought to herself that he really knew her very well. When she saw Madame Ruan looking over, she timely opened her mouth and said, Madam need not worry. If time is tight, I can help from the side. Song Qing-shu was startled. He wondered how she would help. However, seeing her winking at him, he finally realized that she was going to be a spy to spy on the other side's disguise skills. This was just right. In the future, he could learn from her strong points to make up for his shortcomings. Madame Ruan showed a face of embarrassment. Finally, as if she had made a difficult decision, she said, Then, if that is the case, I will embarrass myself. Please leave. Song Qing-shu deliberately said, Actually, I have long heard of Madame's miracles. I also want to see it with my own eyes. Madame Ruan said, Young master, please forgive me. This is our Ruan family secret. Every generation, only the head of the family can learn. Ren Yingying also glared at him, disguised as Bei Haisher. A woman disguised as a man will have to change clothes later. Won't you damage the madame's reputation by staying here? Song Qing-shu only thought that his wife was giving him a way out. He did not think much of it. If that is the case, I will go outside and wait for madame. Anyway, Yingying was watching from the side. When the time came, she could come back and talk. In the room, Madame Ruan took off the mask on her face. It was the real Madame Ruan's personal maid, Pear. She lowered her voice and said to Ren Yingying, Madam, since the other side is a friend and not an enemy, why don't we tell them frankly? Let Miss Ren out and apologize. I think they will not blame us. No, Madame Ruan subconsciously rejected. Seeing the other's puzzled expression, she couldn't help but blush. She hurriedly explained, Did you forget that night when Bei Haisher and his group offended Miss Ren? Did Song Qing-shu fly into a rage? Miss Ren is clearly his reverse scale. If we tell the truth, and he flies into a rage, who on our side can stop him? Everything will have to wait until after Sichuan and when we return to our territory. Pei frowned, but after these few days of contact, Prince Song is a modest gentleman. He should not harm us. Madame Ruan's mind floated to the scene from a few nights ago. She thought to herself, who knows if what he said is true or not? What if he is lying to us? What if he is the mastermind behind Wu Shi's betrayal? This. Pei also hesitated. Madame Ruan continued, The consequences cannot be predicted. It is better to be careful. But in this way, Madame will have to disguise as Miss Ren to accompany him. Pei widened her eyes and looked at her in shock. Madame Ruan smiled bitterly. I am also riding a tiger and cannot back down. I will take one step at a time. Pei's expression suddenly became strange. I think Madame is not riding a tiger and cannot back down. Rather, you are enjoying it. Madame Ruan's expression changed. She stretched out her hand to pinch her. You damned girl, you even dare to make fun of me? Pei dodged and smiled as she repeatedly begged for mercy. Madame, spare me. Madame, spare me. Sit properly. I will help you change your appearance. Madame Ruan snorted. In her heart, she was somewhat at a loss. Just why did I make such a choice? After a while, the two women opened the door. Song Qing-shu was far away on the deck looking at the situation in the direction of Jiangling. Hearing the movement, he turned his head and could not help but reveal a surprised expression. Madame really has a godly skill. You are exactly the same as Bei Haisher. He was praising her from the bottom of his heart. It must be known that he was also a master of disguise. Even though he knew that the other party had changed her appearance, he could not see a single flaw. It was truly a godly skill. Hearing his praise, Ren Yingying, who was to the side, was secretly pleased. Pei raised her chin and stroked her beard. Imitating Bei Haishi's voice, she said, Prince Song, we meet again. Good, not bad. Song Qing-shu circled around her and nodded his head in satisfaction. In a moment, you will go and receive the people that Friday sent and stabilize Jiangling. When we arrive, We will capture them all in one fell swoop. At this time, Pear followed the words that Madame Rouen had taught her and asked, "But with the current armed forces on the ship, I am afraid that we will not be able to defeat so many experts from the Isle of Heroes. Even if young Master were to make a move, with so many people, it is hard to guarantee that nothing will happen." Song Qingshu smiled. "You do not need to worry about this. I have my own plans." Pear was just about to continue asking when a sailor said, "There is a small boat coming this way. Madam, just follow our previous plan and send him away. Do not let him suspect anything. Do not be afraid. I will be nearby to receive you." Song Qingshu finished speaking and pulled Ren Yingying's hand to hide in the shadows around the corner. Pei could only swallow the questions in her stomach. She collected her emotions and walked to the front of the deck. Chapter 1686. After all, he has treated us well. It would be abnormal if we did not show some concern. Madame Rouen's heart trembled. She knew that her concerned expression had revealed a small flaw. Song Qingshu nodded and did not say anything else. At this time, he was actually a little worried. If Bei Haishur revealed a flaw and alerted the enemy, the people of the Isle of Chivalry would withdraw with the treasure in advance. That would be troublesome. Fortunately, Madame Rouen was worthy of being a master of disguise. Not only was her disguise flawless, her reaction was also quick. After chatting with the spy for a while, she found a reasonable reason to explain why she had not sent a message. In the end, she successfully sent the spy away. After the spy drove the boat away, Song Qingshu appeared and applauded. "Madame's appearance is indeed extraordinary." Madame Rouen unhappily glared at him and crisply asked, "What is Prince Chi's plan? Can you tell me now?" Only then did Song Qingshu answer, "It's very simple. I will help Madame deal with those big enemies. In return, Madame will help me transport a batch of goods." "That's simple?" Madame Rouen was somewhat surprised. She originally thought that the other side would propose very harsh conditions. She did not expect that it would only be to transport goods. For them, who had started their business as imperial merchants, this was no trouble at all. However, she quickly realized something and hurriedly asked, "What goods does Prince Chi want to transport?" Song Qingshu shook his finger. "Madame does not need to worry about this." Seeing that he did not say anything, Ren Yingying to the side spoke at the right time. "Song, how do you plan to deal with those thieves?" "I have my own brilliant plan." In front of Madame Rouen, it was not convenient for Song Qingshu to say anything. He could only answer ambiguously. "All right, I have to leave now to prepare to deal with those people in advance. You guys get ready here and wait for me at Jiangling City." After saying this, he used his qin gong to tread on the water and left. Looking at his figure crossing the river on a reed like the legendary Bodhidharma, Pear came to Madame Rouen's side and said with lingering fear, "His martial arts are too terrifying. If he really wants to deal with us, I am afraid we will not have the slightest ability to resist." "Yes, if I had known earlier, I wouldn't have imprisoned Miss Run," Madame Rouen said with a worried expression. Pearl rolled her eyes and suddenly said, "Madam, I have a way to get through this. Even if he knows the truth, he will let us go." "Ah, say it quickly," Madame Rouen hurriedly asked. Pearl moved closer to her ear and whispered, "According to the rumors of Jianghu, this Prince Song is a passionate person. He has always treated the women around him well. Why don't you go with the flow and have some sort of intimate relationship with him? When the time comes, even if he finds out the truth based on this relationship, he might let the Rouen family go." "You damn girl. How can you talk about the mistress like this? How can you face your young master Yang if you say this?" Madame Rouen was ashamed and angry. She grabbed her ear and began to twist it. Pearl cried out in pain, I was wrong. Let go my wife, my ear is going to fall off." "So be it." Madame Rouen snorted and 2 red clouds appeared on her face. Although her words were not forgiving, she still let go. Pearl rubbed her ears and whispered, "That's true. If something really happens, then even young Master Yang will be dragged into this." "What did you say?" Madame Rouen raised her eyebrows. "Nothing." Pearl stuck out her tongue and hurriedly ran away. leaving Madame Ruan alone, deep in thought. After Song Qing-shu arrived at Jiangling, he first went to the pier to confirm that the people of the Isle of Heroes were still there. Then, he quietly left and put on a mask. He then went to the Jin army camp outside the city. Originally, the Jin soldiers saw that he was dressed strangely and wanted to arrest him. However, when they saw the gold medal in his hand, they were shocked and hurriedly welcomed him in. Soon, the general guarding the camp came to the tent. He first checked the gold medal in Tang Kuo's hand and then showed a respectful expression. "What instructions do you have for me?" Song Qing-shu was also very surprised. He did not expect that the general guarding the camp was Wanyan Gang, whom he had personally promoted. He could be considered as his trusted confidant. No wonder he was so respectful when he saw Tang Kuo's gold medal. He did not reveal his identity and only nodded. The marshal has received reliable news that the Song have taken advantage of the peace talks to send a large number of secret agents to Jiangling. They're trying to spy on our military situation and plan to burn down our supplies to help the Song army recapture Jiangling. This will give the Song the initiative at the table of the negotiations. Wanyan Gang was stunned. These southern barbarians are really despicable. Song Qing-shu continued. Therefore, the marshal has sent me here to order you to send people to destroy this wave of southern Song secret agents. They are now at the south pier of the city. Yes, I will mobilize the troops now. Wanyan Gang cupped his hands and said, "Wait a moment." Song Qing-shu once again said, "Because we are now discussing peace with the Song, remember to keep this matter confidential. Do not mention it to anyone except the marshal, lest the southern Song negotiators use it as a pretext." I understand. Wanyan Gang was not a novice in politics. He knew that there were many things in the officialdom that needed to be kept confidential. He did not ask about the cause and effect of the matter. He only ordered an army and told them that he was going to destroy a group of water bandits. At the Jiangling pier, Friday heard the report from his subordinates and knew that Bei Haisher was safe. He heaved a sigh of relief and could vaguely see the Ruan family's ship in the distance. He was completely relieved. Fortunately, everything is fine there. I don't know why, but my eyelids have been twitching. I am worried that something has happened. Ling Tusi smiled and said, "Sir, you are worrying too much. With our kung fu, we can do whatever we want in the entire Jiangling, unless we encounter the regular army of the Jin Kingdom." Before he could finish his sentence, the person who was stationed at the top of the lookout fell down. The two looked at him and saw an arrow in his neck. He was dead. "Alert! Enemy attack!" Friday hurriedly shouted. At this moment, the people who were disguised as sailors took out their weapons and rushed out. They were not afraid. After all, they represented the Isle of Heroes and were used to doing whatever they wanted. They wanted to see who dared to provoke them. However, what greeted them was a dense rain of arrows. Half of the top-notch experts in the Jianghu were instantly killed. After all, the martial arts of the Jianghu were completely useless in the face of the dense and indiscriminate attacks of the army. At this moment, Friday also saw the Jin Kingdom's cavalry charging at him. His hair stood on end. He glared at Ling Tusi and wanted to tear his mouth apart. At this moment, Ling Tusi's face turned green. Without waiting for anyone to call him, he hurriedly used his lightness skill to escape to the west. Before he became the magistrate, he was the leader of a gang in the Jianghu. His kung fu was not bad. Friday did not have the time to scold him. He hurriedly ordered his subordinates to retreat. Unfortunately, the Jin Kingdom's cavalry came prepared and had an absolute advantage in numbers. There was no way these Jianghu people could escape. The entire dock was a one-sided massacre. Friday's eyes were bloodshot. Unfortunately, even if he killed more than a dozen Jin Kingdom cavalrymen, it would not help the overall situation. Seeing that the situation was hopeless, he could only start to escape with hatred. Is Wu Lu a traitor? He could not understand why the Jin men would attack him. After all, they had been very careful from the beginning to the end. However, he quickly stopped because a masked man was standing in front of him. His clothes were fluttering in the wind, and he looked like an immortal. However, at this moment, he looked like the most terrifying demon in Friday's eyes. Ling Tusi was lying at his feet, and he did not know whether he was dead or alive. Who are you? Friday was full of fear. Why is Wu not here? The masked man was naturally Song Qing-shu. He did not make a move earlier. Instead, he stood at a high place and observed the situation. When he noticed that Ling Tusi and Friday were escaping, he rushed to stop them. However, he unexpectedly found that Wu Lu-chi was not there. Friday did not answer him. Instead, he waved his palms and attacked. Although he could not defeat thousands of soldiers and horses, there were only a few dozen people in the entire Jianghu who could beat him in a one-on-one fight. The world was so big, and he could not be that unlucky. Before Song Qing-shu arrived, he could already feel a gust of scorching air. Song Qing-shu knew that one of the Isle of Heroes' messengers of virtue rewarding and evil punishing was carrying a red gourd and a blue gourd. The red gourd contained a strong medicinal wine that was extremely dry and hot. It was made by adding the blazing fire pill into the wine. The blue gourd contained a cool medicinal wine that was extremely cold. It was made by mixing the 99 pills into the wine. The scorching flame pill and the 99 pill each contained quite a lot of spirit pills and medicines. The 99 pill contained 81 poisonous plants, while the scorching flame pill contained fewer poisonous plants, such as the crane's crown and the peacock's gallbladder. The people of the Isle of Heroes relied on this medicinal wine to stimulate their bodies, allowing them to cultivate to a level that far surpassed their peers. This Friday's palm wind was scorching, and it was obvious that he had been practicing by drinking the fire pill. Not only was his inner force strong, but his palm wind also contained the poison of the fire pill. If someone who did not know what was going on rashly fought him, it would be easy for him to fail miserably. However, Song Qing-shu knew about the Island of Heroes very well. Moreover, his inner force had reached perfection. Ever since he successfully detoxified the world's #1 poison, the golden ripple flower, he was now immune to all poisons. However, he was too lazy to test the poison on his body. He raised his hand, and a few crystal-clear things shot out. Shocked, Friday thought it was some kind of hidden weapon. He hurriedly raised his other hand, intending to use his inner force to knock it away. But soon, he was shocked to discover that these thin ice flakes that looked like they would shatter with a gust of wind had no effect on them at all for some reason. Instead, the opponent directly broke through the wind created by his palm and shot several major acupoints on his body. Is this the spell of life and death? As a messenger of the Island of Heroes and punishing the evil, Friday often traveled in Jianghu and knew a little about many secrets. He might not have recognized them before, but when a mysterious hidden weapons entered his body, how could he not recognize them? Song Qing-shu looked at him in surprise and said, "You are quite knowledgeable." He had extorted these life-death charms from Tang's sire, and he had never used them. Today, he could use them on the people of the Island of Heroes. Chapter 1687. Song Qing-shu ignored his question and asked, "Why isn't Wu Lu here?" He is the commander of the Guangdong Navy. He left in a hurry after he heard the news from Guangdong. Friday scratched his body desperately. At first, he was in so much pain that he spoke intermittently. But later, he spoke faster and faster, as if he could relieve some of the pain. The life-death spell had always made people beg for death. Moreover, Friday's inner strength clashed with the coldness of the life-death spell, making it even more violent. Even though he had seen many things, he couldn't help but confess the truth. Song Qing-shu secretly clicked his tongue. The life-death spell was really a good way to make people tell the truth. At this moment, Friday suddenly screamed and hit the boulder next to him. His head was immediately smashed, and it looked like he was going to die. Song Qing-shu frowned. He had a lot of questions to ask him, but he didn't expect him to commit suicide. Recalling the painful look on his face, he secretly guessed that the coldness of the life-death spell had most likely triggered the heat poison of the fire elixir that he usually took. That was why he was in so much pain. Even a top master like Friday couldn't bear it and had to commit suicide in order to escape. I should have spared Ling Tusi's life just now. Song Qing-shu secretly frowned. He didn't like Ling Tusi at all. In the original novel, He was insane to bury his daughter alive for the sake of the treasure. In this world, he even sought refuge with Machi Sual and offered them the golden ripple flower, which almost killed him. Now, he sold his master for glory and sought refuge with Jia Sherdao to make a fortune. No matter how he looked at it, he deserved to die. Forget it. Even if he's alive, I probably won't get anything out of him. Song Qing-shu came to the side of Friday's body and examined it. He took out an account book and flipped through it. It turned out to be a rough count of Liang Yuandi's treasure. There were tens of thousands of gold ingots, hundreds of thousands of silver ingots, dozens of boxes of jewelry, dozens of boxes of gold and silver wares, and a pure gold Buddha. Time was tight, so they didn't have the time to count the exact number. They could only make a rough count, and would probably slowly count it after they were transported back to a safe place. Looking at the account book, Song Qing-shu secretly clicked his tongue. There were indeed a lot of treasures. The gold, silver, and jewelry in the boxes alone were very rich, not to mention the most important pure gold Buddha. There were at least 10 tons of it. At this time, the battle at the dock had come to an end. The Jin soldiers came prepared, and no one from the Island of Heroes escaped. Song Qing-shu put away the account book and returned to the dock. Wan Yinggang did not know that there was a huge amount of treasures hidden in the warehouse at the pier. He thought that they were spies sent by the Southern Song dynasty. After confirming that there were no survivors, he bid farewell to Song Qing-shu and quietly left with his army. Even though they left, the gene was that there. Yu and Wan Yinggang had their Lu the gang still at the Jiang family, Lu family, but after said he pointed. Song. But after the Lu's Jiang, they left still, they said. Shu. Song Qing-shu pointed at the warehouse. Madame Ruan had her men do it. She came to Meng Qi and asked, "What's your relationship with the Jin soldiers?" Madame Ruan waved her hand and asked her men to do it. She came to Meng Qi and asked, "What do you have to do with the Jin soldiers?" Song Qing-shu knew that she must have seen the Jin cavalry killing the people of the Island of Heroes. He answered, "Don't think too much. I just misled them into thinking that the people of the Island of Heroes are the Southern Song's secret emissaries. They are plotting against them." Really? Madame Ruan was skeptical about this explanation. However, no matter how imaginative she was, she could never imagine that Song Qing-shu could command the Jin soldiers. Ren Ying at the side winked. Madame Ruan nodded without batting an eyelid. She then asked, "What are in these boxes? Why are they so heavy?" They were royal merchants and dealt with all kinds of goods every day. Seeing that the sailors could not even lift one box, they knew that it was not ordinary goods. Song Qing-shu said, "I have helped you get through the disaster as promised. You just need to help me transport the goods. As for what the goods are, I don't think I have any obligation to tell you. Also, don't try to open the boxes. Otherwise, I don't mind killing you." As he said this, the surrounding temperature dropped. It was as if there was a murderous aura. Madame Ruan had difficulty breathing. She was angry, but thinking of Meng Qi's unfathomable kung fu, she was more afraid. She didn't know what to say. Ren Ying tried to smooth things over. "Madame Ruan, you don't have to be angry. Song Qing-shu is doing this for your own good. Sometimes, the more secrets you know, the more dangerous it is." Madame Ruan's face softened a little. "In that case, I won't ask more. I will go down and supervise them to lift the boxes." Then she left as if she was escaping. Looking at her disappearing figure, Ren Ying smiled and said, "When did our young master Song become so inconsiderate to the fairer sex? Look at how scared the madam is. In order to prevent her from doing something stupid, I can only do this." Song Qing-shu paused and suddenly frowned. "I don't know why, but I feel that this Madame Ruan is a little strange." "What's strange?" Ren Ying's heart jumped. She knew that Pearl was not her. If she changed her appearance, she would inevitably give herself away. "Nothing. Maybe I'm thinking too much." Song Qing-shu shook his head and continued to look at the sailors on the dock. After all, the boxes were full of gold, silver, and jewelry. He didn't want to leak any information. Ren Ying's eyebrows flashed with worry. But she was most concerned about something else. Song Qingshu, what is in those boxes? Song Qingshu didn't hide it from her. He casually answered, Liang Yuandi's treasure. Liang Yuandi's treasure? He didn't know that his casual answer had caused a huge storm in the heart of Ren Yingying. Is that legend true? The treasure of Liang Yuandi had always been circulated among the people. There were also rumors of Lin Xingju in Jianghu. As a top-secret agent, Madame Ruan had naturally heard of this matter, but she didn't know whether it was true or not. Feeling her heart beat faster, Song Qingshu said with a smile, What's wrong? Are you scared? With this treasure, Golden Snake Battalion won't have to worry about military expenses for the next few years. Ren Yingying responded with a smile, but began to calculate in her heart. During this time, Minister Han mobilized for the Northern Expedition, and the military expenses were quite large. Later, when the war was not going well, he even personally supported the front line. Most of the Ruan family's liquid funds were also used. Now it could be said that their financial resources were exhausted. If they could get this treasure, then at least half of Minister Han's current crisis could be solved. However, Song Qingshu's martial arts were unfathomable. How could they get the treasure from his hands? Or should they wait until they reached Sichuan and borrow the power of the Yang family? At this time, Song Qingshu was also thinking about where to hide the treasure. Mount Not to mention the fact that the water route was blocked. Even if it was transported to Mount, how would such a heavy box be transported to the Golden Peak? The box was fine, but there was also the Golden Buddha. In addition, if they wanted to use this treasure in the future, how would they transport it to Shandong, which was thousands of miles away? That would be a headache. Knowing that Song Qingshu was here to keep an eye on it, Ren Yingying excused herself to rest in her room and left. She then took many detours to find Pearl to discuss this matter. When Pearl heard that these goods were Liang Yuandi's treasures, she was shocked as well. But when she heard that she was planning on taking these treasures, she was scared half to death. Madam, are you crazy? It's not like you haven't seen him fight before. This time, he was able to use the Jin Kingdom soldiers to kill so many of the Isle of Heroes experts. If he finds out what you are planning, we will all die without a grave. Mr. Han has treated the Ruan family with great kindness. No matter how dangerous it is, I will find a way to repay his kindness, Ren Yingying said with determination. Seeing that she had made up her mind, Pearl could only think of a way to help her. Why don't we poison him? His martial arts are too high, and we won't be able to fight him head-on. These years, we have traveled all over the world and have collected a few powerful poisons. Many experts of the Jiang who cannot withstand them. If we use poison, then it will be a fight to the death. Ren Yingying furrowed her eyebrows. Pearl's eyes widened. First, we kidnapped Miss Run, and now we have the idea of his treasure. It is a fight to the death. Could it be that you, madam, have fallen in love with him? Ren Yingying's face turned red. What nonsense are you saying? Only, this method wouldn't work. Previously, news came from Yangzhou that he was poisoned by the gold ripple sunflower. Everyone thought that he was dead for sure, but in the end, he returned unscathed and even seized Li Kashio's property. Even the number one poison in the world can't deal with him. What use are the poisons we collected? If poison doesn't work, then how about using a knockout drug? A knockout drug is different from poison. He can defend against a poison, but he might not be able to defend against a knockout drug. Of course, normal knockout drugs won't work. But in the past, we obtained a bottle of drunken immortal dew from the West. It is said that a single drop can make an elephant sleep for 3 days. No matter how strong he is, his body can't compare to an elephant's, right? Pearl harumphed. Clearly, she was comparing who was stronger between Song Qingshu and the elephant. Not as strong as an elephant. Ren Yingying thought of the two of them in bed. She couldn't help but touch her face. Thinking back, her cheeks were still sore. At this time, Pearl opened her mouth. Of course, other than the knockout drug, there's another method. What method? Ren Yingying asked. She felt that using drugs was a bit too risky. Pearl let out a strange smile. This method requires the madam to personally act. Since ancient times, even heroes have a weakness for the charms of a beautiful woman. Ren Yingying finally got angry. Is there a maid like you who encourages her mistress to have an affair? Chapter 1688. Hearing Pearl's plan, Ren Ying suddenly felt a little tempted. It seemed that the feasibility was not low. However, she did not immediately declare her position. Instead, she looked at Pearl meaningfully. During this time, you've been encouraging me to use a honey trap. It can't be to take revenge on me, right? Pearl's expression changed, and she hurriedly lowered her head. Her expression could not be seen clearly as she said in a small voice, "Pearl doesn't dare." What happened back then? Do you still hold a grudge? Ren Ying kept staring at her. Pearl replied with a face full of surprise. Pearl has already forgotten what happened back then. I don't know what Madam is talking about. Ren Ying lightly snorted. Whether it is true or false, I hope you do not harbor any thoughts of revenge. Pearl replied in a panic, I don't dare. Ren Ying looked at her for a long time before turning around and leaving. Go down and keep an eye on them. Don't let the sailors discover what is in the chest to avoid trouble. Yes, Pearl bowed her head and respectfully sent her off. An indescribable flame flashed in the depths of her eyes. For the next few days, Madame Ruan constantly plotted on how to safely obtain the treasure from Song Qingshu's hands. Song Qingshu constantly thought about where the treasure would be transported to. At the same time, he changed his room to a place near the treasure chest. He monitored the treasure at all times, making it impossible for her to start. During this time, Madame Ruan did not know why, but several times she restored her true form and invited Song Qingshu to her boudoir to discuss matters. She did not know whether she was trying to find out the relationship between him and the Jin Kingdom by beating around the bush, or whether she was really subconsciously affected by Pearl's suggestion and really had the intention of using a honey trap. However, she never made up her mind. Even so, these 2 days were a feast for Song Qingshu's eyes. This was because Madame Ruan would often lie on the couch and summon him. She was dressed at home and did not treat him as an outsider at all. Song Qingshu wasn't one of those stubborn moral guardians, so he naturally used an appreciative gaze to examine her beauty when she was naked, especially that curve between her waist and buttocks that was filled with a mature charm, as well as the faintly discernible long legs beneath the hem of her skirt. Just looking at it made his blood boil. However, thinking that she was Azu and Z's mother, he could only suppress the evil thoughts in his heart with great perseverance. At the same time, he was secretly amazed. If people who didn't know the truth saw the three of them together, they would most likely think that they were sisters. Moreover, with her delicate voice, people might even think that she was the youngest sister. It was really unreasonable. How could she take care of herself so well? That night, he talked to Ren Ying about this matter and couldn't help but say, You'd better be careful of your new bestie. These days, Ren Ying and Madame Ruan were inseparable. Naturally, they were worthy of the 2 words bosom friends. Hearing his words, Ren Ying's heart skipped a beat. Thinking that she had exposed herself, she hurriedly asked, Why do you say that? Song Qingshu hesitated for a moment and finally answered, I've always felt that she seemed to be seducing me these days. Ah, Ren Ying exclaimed. If it weren't for the mask covering her face at this time, she would probably be so embarrassed that she wished that there was a hole to hide in. Were her actions so obvious? Of course, it's also possible that I'm thinking too much. Song Qingshu thought about how to organize his words. After all, I am friends with Azu and Z. She can also be considered my elder. Maybe she treats me as a junior, so she doesn't pay attention to the precautions between men and women. However, he himself didn't have much confidence in saying this. After all, when the other party invited Ren Ying alone before, it was because as a married woman, it was not convenient for her to let a man into the bedroom. At this time, Ren Ying was ashamed and angry. She didn't expect to hear someone else's private evaluation of her. Embarrassed, she couldn't help but murmur, She can't be considered your elder. You're not much younger than her. Song Qingshu was stunned. Only then did he realize that he was not young in this world. In the original work, when Song Qingshu appeared, he was already almost 30 years old. Then he bounced around for a few years. Then he also bounced around for a few years after he transmigrated. Now, he was already over 30 years old, and Azu and Z were now girls of 16 or 17 years old. In ancient times, women gave birth earlier. If Ruan Xingzhu gave birth to Azu at 16 years old, she would now be in her early 30s. They were of the same generation, not much different in age. When he realized this, Song Qingshu felt a little dizzy. He originally thought that he was the leader of the younger generation, but he didn't expect that he was already in the middle generation. He subconsciously thought that girls like Azu and Z were of the same age, but in fact, they could call him uncle. He looked at Ren Yingying beside him. She was only 19 years old. Thinking about the age difference between them, to a certain extent, it could be considered as an old cow eating young grass. As soon as this thought came to mind, Song Qingshu felt a heat all over his body. He couldn't help but pick Ren Yingying up. Seeing him carrying her to the bedside, Ren Yingying couldn't help but turn pale. "You? What are you doing?" Song Qingshu chuckled. "You reminded me of my age. A weird uncle like me likes to bully young girls like you." Ren Yingying almost vomited blood. She didn't expect that her counterattack would lead to this result. If she had known this would happen, she wouldn't have said anything just now. I'm here in Tiangue." In a panic, she finally found her life-saving weapon. Song Qingshu carried her directly to the bed and snorted. "How many days has it been since you started to come to Tiangue?" "It's over." Ren Yingying was shocked. During this period of time, she had been so careless that she forgot that her self-defense reason had a time limit. Her mind couldn't help but go blank. For a moment, she couldn't think of how to solve the current crisis. "Don't." Feeling the coldness of her body, Ren Yingying finally sobered up a little. She randomly found an excuse. "Don't touch me. You must be thinking about that Madame Ruan now. You just mistook me for her. I don't want to do this." She hurriedly finished this paragraph, and her face was so red that no one knew how red it was. But there was no other way. At this critical moment, she could only use herself to block the knife. Song Qingshu didn't deny it. He couldn't help but sigh. "You know, Madame Ruan has been hanging around in front of me every day these days. It really makes me angry. I can't wait to press her under my body and ravage her." Hearing this, Ren Yingying suddenly felt a little proud of herself. She couldn't help but ask, "Then why don't you go to her? With your martial arts, it's easy to get her. Looking at her attitude these days, it's obvious that she won't refuse you, right?" Song Qingshu glared at her angrily. "Yingying, you know that I can't do anything to her, but you still say that on purpose." Ren Yingying was stunned and asked in confusion why. Song Qingshu said awkwardly, "It's not like you don't know the relationship between me and Z. If I have an ambiguous relationship with her, won't I be despised by etiquette and morality?" When he first met Z, Ren Yingying was also there. She knew that Z had become his slave, so there was no need to hide it from her. Ren Yingying's heart skipped a beat. Sure enough, between him and Z, while she was thinking, the man on top of her moved abnormally fast. He quickly untied both of them and directly pressed on her. Ren Yingying almost fainted because of this sudden impact. She couldn't help but stare at the man in front of her. For a moment, her lips trembled, and she was so ashamed and angry that she couldn't speak. Song Qingshu stretched his body comfortably and said contentedly, "I told you that your Tiangue is finished. Do you know that I am?" Ren Yingying almost fainted because of anger. She thought, "You just said that you can't have sex with me," but the next moment, "What are you?" Song Qingshu lovingly touched her sweaty hair on her temples and asked with a smile. Ren Yingying wanted to say something, but stopped. At this time, what was done was done. Even if she revealed her identity, what was the point? And wouldn't that be even more embarrassing? What's more, if he knew the truth, it was hard to guarantee that he would vent his anger on the Ruan family. Thinking of the honey trap that Pearl mentioned before, Ren Yingying felt a little dizzy. Now that things had come to this, she could only go with the flow and use this plan. She wasn't a little girl who didn't know how to deal with worldly affairs, but a mature woman. Moreover, she had been managing the Ruan family for many years, so she knew how to weigh the pros and cons. Now that things had come to this, she could only stop the losses in time and maximize the benefits. But benefits were one thing, and feelings were another. Thinking that she had been taken advantage of by him this time, she felt a little suffocated. Suddenly, she opened her mouth and fiercely bit on the shoulder of the man in front of her. Why did you bite me? Song Qingshu sucked in a cold breath. Ren Yingying didn't say anything. She just bit him hard. On one hand, she was venting the depression in her heart, and on the other hand, she was suppressing the surging feelings in her heart. Ever since she had used the art of blood ignition, her body had become weak. Song Qingshu had always felt sorry for her, so he didn't dare to use force to make her let go. But he had another way, so he used all the methods he had. He thought to himself, do you have the ability to keep your mouth shut? Ren Yingying had never experienced such a violent storm of methods. She didn't know when she let go, but her body became softer and softer. She became a warm ball of fire that wrapped around the man in front of her. It wasn't until the middle of the night that Song Qingshu caressed the soft skin of the beauty. He couldn't help but sigh. It's been a long time since I've enjoyed myself like this. Why does it feel like your body is a lot better today? Yingying? Yes, Ren Yingying had no strength left in her and could only softly respond. Song Qingshu reminisced and couldn't help but say, and I have a very strange feeling today. What feeling? Feeling the broad and solid chest of the man. Ren Yingying couldn't help but have a strange feeling. I always feel that I'm being intimate with another woman. Song Qingshu pondered for a long time and finally came to a conclusion. Ren Yingying's heart beat wildly when she heard this, but she was also quick-witted and quickly found a reason. You always think of Madame Ruan in your heart. Of course, you feel that you're being intimate with another woman. Song Qingshu smiled awkwardly. He did think of Madame Ruan for a while, just now. Feeling guilty, he hurriedly changed the topic. Oh, I forgot to heal you just now. I'm too tired today. Don't do it. Hearing his words, Ren Yingying finally panicked. Song Qingshu looked serious. Yingying, don't be willful. I just felt that your body has obviously improved. Obviously, the previous healing has worked. A few days ago, your Tiangue came, and you haven't warmed your meridians for a while. Now you can't delay anymore. Chapter 1689. Ren Yingying was originally lying there comfortably, but when she heard his words, she felt as if she had fallen into an ice cellar. She had been so careful for so long, but it was all for naught? Song Lang, what are you talking about? She still made the last effort, but her heart had sunk to the bottom because she felt that she was locked by the other she, as if she was being stared at by a giant beast, or as if she was being held down by Mount Tai. She could not even move a finger, and there was a kind of trembling from the bottom of her soul. Song Qingshu did not answer and directly reached out his hand to explore her face. Soon, he found a clue and directly took off her mask. Seeing her face clearly, Song Qingshu could not help but be surprised. It's you? Who else could it be but Madame Ruan? Madame Ruan's mind was now blank, and she did not know how to deal with this situation. No wonder I always felt that something was wrong. Song Qingshu recalled the events of the past few days, and finally had a feeling of a sudden realization. In fact, he cannot be blamed. First, Madame Ruan's disguise was impeccable, and her acting was really superb. Second, these days his attention was focused on the people of the Isle of Heroes and Liang Yuandi's treasure. Even if he felt that something was wrong, he did not think about it in detail. Just now, when he was about to warm his wife's meridians, he suddenly found that her meridians had not been affected by the burning blood technique. Song, Prince Song. Madame Ruan greeted him awkwardly and quickly thought about how to explain. Song Qingshu's expression changed, and he asked coldly, "Where is Yingying?" Madame Ruan gradually recovered some of her usual calmness and smiled when she heard this. Don't you think it is too heartless to talk about other women in this situation? After her reminder, Song Qingshu realized that her hair was now messy, and her delicate body was partly hidden under her clothes. In particular, a layer of redness appeared on her skin, and coupled with her long legs, it was enough to make any man's blood boil. However, this did not include Song Qingshu, who was not in the mood to care about these things. His heart was full of Run Ying's safety. Stop putting on an act here. This is useless against me. Hurry up and tell me where Ying is now. Song Qingshu said expressionlessly. Madame Ruan shook her head and sighed faintly. It's no wonder that people say that the unobtainable is the best. Men don't cherish women after they get them. I didn't expect that I would personally experience it. Just a moment ago, they were obviously being tender and sweet with each other, but now they turn their backs on me. She actually didn't want to do this, but now that things had come to this, she could only stall for time and see if she could think of a way to escape. Of course, it would be even better if the other party took pity on her. As expected, Song Qingshu was reminded of the scene just now. He couldn't help but look strange. You really put in a lot of money. A look of shame and anger flashed across Madame Ruan's face. Do you think that I wanted to? Isn't it because you are too much of a beast? I didn't even have time to react before you. She couldn't finish her words no matter what. Only then did Song Qingshu show a trace of a smile. This is the way to show your true feelings. Aren't you tired of using that kind of artificial tone all the time? Madame Ruan snorted and turned her head away. Don't worry, Miss Ren is very safe now. She planned to stabilize Song Qingshu first and see if she could use Ren Ying's safety as a bargaining chip to negotiate with him. Song Qingshu finally breathed a sigh of relief. Based on his contact with Madame Ruan these days, she wasn't that kind of stupid woman. She shouldn't go so far as to hurt Ren Ying. Now that he heard her say this, he was more relieved. But he still continued to ask, I don't want to hear other answers. I just want to know where Ying is now. Madame Ruan grabbed the quilt to cover her chest and said angrily, You have to let me put on my clothes first. But Song Qingshu didn't buy it. He directly shook his hand and wrapped the quilt around her body. His voice was as cold as ice. I will ask for the last time. Where's Ying now? If you continue to talk about other things, I will make your Ruan family disappear today. With his current level of cultivation, his murderous aura was almost tangible. The air seemed to become sticky. The teacup on the side also made a caw-caw sound, and a few cracks unknowingly appeared. Madame Ruan saw this, and her whole person had difficulty breathing. She opened her mouth, but in the end, she didn't take any more risks. Miss Ren is in the secret room of my room. Knowing the whereabouts of his wife, Song Qingshu couldn't hold back anymore. He got up and was about to grab Madame Ruan to go to the secret room, but he heard her shy and anxious voice. Hey, if Miss Ren saw me like this, what would she think? You wouldn't want to see that scene. Song Qingshu frowned and looked at her current appearance. It was indeed inconvenient for Ren Ying to see her. Quickly put on your clothes. Then why don't you turn around? Madame Ruan bit her lip and stared at him. Song Qingshu said faintly, No, I have to keep an eye on you. Who knows what you will do behind my back? Your martial arts are so high. What can I do? Madame Ruan said angrily. If you stand here and watch, how can I put on my clothes? Why can't you wear it? Song Qingshu wasn't moved at all. It's not like I haven't seen it just now. Is it necessary to cover it? You still have the nerve to say that. Madame Ruan said through gritted teeth. She couldn't help but be angry when talking about this. She was carelessly taken advantage of by him. Then she was still immersed in the tenderness and honey of the previous time. But the others suddenly turned against her, making her fall from heaven to hell. Since you decided to seduce me, why do you have to make this kind of gesture now? Song Qingshu learned that Ren Ying had suffered somewhere during this time. Of course, he didn't have a good tone to the initiator. I told you it was just an accident. Madame Ruan couldn't help but feel bitter. The current situation was really unreasonable. This time, she really suffered a double loss. She was even treated as that kind of woman by the other side. She really wanted to cry, but had no tears. Don't say that 2 days ago, when you found me in your room and made all kinds of gestures to show off your figure, was also an accident. Song Qingshu naturally didn't believe it. Madame Ruan was speechless for a moment. After a long time, she said, At that time, I did have the idea of seducing you, but I didn't finally make up my mind. Who knew that at night you would pounce on me like a little wolf dog? Song Qingshu's face became hot. Thinking back, she did resist at the beginning. But what was done could not be undone. Didn't she quickly cooperate? Of course, out of consideration for her face, he didn't say this in the end. Are you dressed? Song Qing-shu didn't want to continue this topic with her. I'm dressed. Seeing that he didn't turn around, Madame Ruan had no choice but to quickly tidy up her clothes. But in her heart, she was sulking. Song Qing-shu didn't speak anymore. He grabbed her shoulder and used his qing gong to quickly arrive outside her bedroom. But he was stopped by the guards of the Ruan family. Get out of the way. Song Qing-shu was in a very bad mood. He had an impulse to kill. The guards recognized him and felt their scalps tingle. But because of their duty, they still plucked up their courage and said, Prince Song, coming to find our madam in the middle of the night. Isn't it too inconvenient? At this time, Madame Ruan flashed out and glared at them unhappily. If I tell you to get out of the way, just get out of the way. Why do you talk so much nonsense? He had already taken advantage of her. What was inconvenient? Seeing that their mistress was together with him, the group of guards opened their eyes wide and hurriedly made way. Young master and madam, please. After the two entered, a few guards secretly whispered to each other. They entered the same room so late at night. Could it be? Are you stupid? Madam usually dressed up beautifully, but just now, she didn't even comb her hair properly. Obviously, something happened between the two of them just now. Yes, I also noticed that Madam's clothes were untidy and her buttons were buttoned wrong. But wouldn't this be unfair to young Master Yang? Are you stupid? We are people of the Ruan family, not people of the Yang family. This Prince Song is much better than young Master Yang. Although they deliberately lowered their voices, it was now the dead of the night. Plus, Song Qing-shu and Madame Ruan were considered experts, so they heard almost every word. These guards of yours are quite loyal and devoted. They are thinking of you wholeheartedly, Song Qing-shu said with a faint smile. Madame Ruan blushed to the extreme. When I am free, I will drive these people back to their hometown to farm. Song Qing-shu snorted. You may not have this opportunity. Letting Ying out first. At this time, Madame Ruan, who was originally living inside, also woke up and ran out to take a look. When she saw the appearance of the two, she couldn't help but be shocked. Song Qing-shu's figure flashed and directly restrained her. He pulled off her mask, and naturally it was Pearl. You two have cheated me so hard, Song Qing-shu said expressionlessly. Madame Ruan laughed bitterly and didn't reply. She directly walked to the side of the bed and opened a secret compartment. She twisted the mechanism, and the wall beside the bed slid to the side, revealing the entrance to a secret room. You two go in first. Song Qing-shu casually unsealed Pearl's acupuncture point. No wonder I didn't find anything strange. After all, this was Madame Ruan's bedroom. Plus, the entrance was beside the bed, so it was not convenient for him to observe. Following behind the two, before Song Qing-shu entered, he only heard Ren Yingying's voice coming from inside. You don't have to waste your efforts. I won't say anything. Hearing that her voice was only a little tired and weak, nothing serious, Song Qing-shu finally relaxed. He couldn't help but rush in. Yingying, I've come to save you. At this time, Ren Yingying was sitting by the table. Seeing him also walk in, her mouth involuntarily opened wide. Following that, her eyes filled with mist, and she directly threw herself into his arms. Song Qing-shu. Yingying, Song Qing-shu hugged her slightly trembling body and secretly scolded himself for being muddle-headed. Yingying's figure was slender and beautiful, while Ruan Xingzhu was obviously more voluptuous. He actually didn't notice anything strange earlier. After crying for a while, Ren Yingying suddenly fiercely bit him. I thought you would quickly come to save me. Who knew that you would only find out after so long? At this time, Ruan Xingzhu, who was at the side, wished for the whole world to be in chaos and added, when I first pretended to be young master, young lady Ren saw through the flaw with one look. Song Qing-shu was even more embarrassed. He fiercely glared at her and hurriedly comforted his wife. Perhaps it was because the mental pressure during this period of time was too great. Now that she saw her lover, Ren Yingying finally relaxed. After playing for a while, she quickly fell into a deep sleep in his arms. Song Qing-shu carried his wife out of the secret room. He didn't return to his own room. After all, there had just been a great battle. He was really embarrassed to let her sleep there. Chapter 1690. The two women looked at each other and saw the uneasiness in each other's hearts. Being stared at by Song Qing-shu was like being stared at by a giant beast. They were so scared that they didn't even dare to breathe. Song Qing-shu flicked his fingers and hit Pearl's sleeping acupoint. Then he looked at Ruan Xingzhu and said, "Tell me, when did you do it?" The reason why he hit Pearl's acupoint was mainly to follow the principle of isolation and interrogation in the future, so that the two of them wouldn't collude. Ruan Xingzhu opened her mouth, but she didn't try to play any tricks. Instead, she told the whole story honestly. "No wonder you wanted to change our rooms." Song Qing-shu snorted. "Why did you do it to us?" Ruan Xingzhu sighed. It was useless to quibble now. She could only try to move him with sincerity and see if she could survive. She said, "Because the Golden Snake Camp didn't attack the Jin Kingdom during the Northern Expedition as agreed. Minister Han suspected that you had ulterior motives. Plus, Ling Hu Chong suddenly had a problem in Sichuan." "Wait," Song Qing-shu interrupted her. "You know his real identity?" Minister Han is the head of all officials. It's not difficult for him to investigate a person's background. Speaking of her lord, Ruan Xingzhu's tone was full of respect and pride. "If you knew his identity, why did you let him go to Sichuan?" Song Qing-shu didn't understand. Ruan Xingzhu answered, "We found out his real identity after the competition. If we had exposed him then, it would have been too big of an impact. It would have been easy for Jia Shidao's side to attack Minister Han. It would have been easy for him to be accused of playing tricks on the emperor. So Minister Han decided to make the best of it. Anyway, the Wu family endorsed him and took care of the aftermath, so he didn't have to worry about his identity being exposed. I thought that Ling Hu Chong would be grateful, but who knew that he would betray us?" Song Qing-shu snorted and said, "I'm afraid Minister Han thought that his background was simple and easy to control. Although he and Ling Hu Chong could not be considered friends, he knew that Ling Hu Chong had a noble character. Naturally, he was somewhat displeased to hear others slander him like this." Ruan Xingzhu was silent for a long time before she continued with the previous topic. "Prime Minister Han already suspected you. Now that there's a problem in Sichuan and you're secretly heading there, it's hard for me not to suspect that you're the mastermind behind the great changes in Sichuan, given the relationship between Miss Ren and Ling Hu Chong." Song Qing-shu angrily retorted, "What do you mean by Ying and Ling Hu Chong's relationship? Do you think I'm like you guys who would resort to unscrupulous methods to achieve my goals and use my wife to seduce him?" Ruan Xingzhu's complexion paled. She knew that the other party was mocking her actions. She smiled mournfully. "I know you look down on me, but before I die, I have a question. I hope that you can let me die with understanding on the account that we were husband and wife for a day. Speak." Song Qing-shu was expressionless. "What exactly are you going to do in Sichuan? Are you behind Ling Hu Chong's betrayal?" Ruan Xingzhu stared into his eyes. Song Qing-shu indifferently said, "I can only tell you that Ling Hu Chong's betrayal has nothing to do with us." Ruan Xingzhu's breathing instantly quickened. After a long time, she seemed to be deflated. "In the end, I was just wasting my energy. I even made a great enemy for the Ruan clan. Now you can die in peace, right?" Song Qing-shu raised his hand, and Ruan Xingzhu felt her vision go black. "I'm going to die just like this." At this moment, Ruan Xingzhu didn't know if she was regretting, unwilling, or some other kind of emotion. However, she soon lost consciousness. After what seemed like a long time, she suddenly opened her eyes. Like a drowning person who had been rescued from the shore, she took a deep breath. She had never felt that the air was so fresh and delicious. She looked around and realized that she was still in the room. Song Qing-shu was standing by the window, not far away, gazing at the bright moon on the river. "I'm not dead yet," Ruan Xingzhu mumbled to herself in disbelief. "Do you really want to die?" Song Qing-shu had just sealed her sleep acupuncture point. He then interrogated Pearl and discovered that there were no discrepancies between the two statements. Only then did he wake her up. Even ants live without purpose, let alone humans. Ruan Xingzhu faintly sighed. At this moment, Song Qingshu was frowning. He looked like he wanted to say something, but stopped. He turned around to look at Ren Yingying, who was sleeping soundly on the bed. He beckoned to Ruan Xingzhu and said, "Come with me outside." Ruan Xingzhu didn't dare to resist. She silently followed behind him. During this time, she had a feeling that it was absurd. Not long ago, the two of them were tender and sweet, but now she was trembling with fear. He could take her life at any time. After coming to the deck and feeling the cold wind on the river, Song Qingshu finally spoke. "Madam has put me in a very difficult situation." Ruan Xingzhu was startled. She thought to herself, "Who is the difficult one now?" Fortunately, his next words solved her doubts. "Ozzy and I are good friends. Just now, I had that kind of relationship with you. If this gets out, it will be a huge scandal." Although many men would fantasize about it, fantasizing was one thing. Actually doing it was another. This kind of thing was not only a taboo in the future, but even in the ancient times. If Song Qingshu only wanted to be a Jianghu boss or a rich man, this kind of thing would not matter. After all, it was not like no one played this way. But if his ambition was to rule the world, this kind of thing could never be done. If this got out, it would be a devastating blow to his reputation. When that time came, his enemies could use this reason to punish him. It should be known that in the ancient times, there was a good reason to attack. If this kind of thing caused him to be in a disadvantageous position in public opinion, it would be a disaster. So from the beginning, Song Qingshu had been in endless distress. He didn't know how to deal with this matter. Hearing his words, Ruan Xingzhu was startled at first. Then, she understood what he was talking about. Her fair cheeks couldn't help but blush. "Do you think I want to do this? Who asked you to do it without giving me a chance to explain?" Song Qingshu was also extremely depressed. He became even more furious when he heard that. "You clearly know the relationship between me and Z, yet you still came to use a honey trap on me. You even pretended to be my wife and slept with me in the same bed?" Ruan Xingzhu was also shocked. "Did you really sleep with Ozzy?" Song Qingshu glared at her angrily. "What do you think?" Ruan Xingzhu pursed her lips and smiled. Suddenly, her eyes flickered. "Then, between the two of us, who do you think is better?" Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. He instinctively started to compare the two of them. Each had their own merits. For a moment, he really couldn't tell who was better. Shaking his head, Song Qingshu hurriedly expelled these thoughts that he shouldn't have. He couldn't help but be shocked and angry. "Is this something that a mother like you should say?" "Who said I'm her mother?" Ruan Xingzhu's anxiety was relieved. At this moment, she smiled extremely happily. Song Qingshu was shocked. "Ozzy isn't your daughter?" Ruan Xingzhu nodded. "Of course she's my daughter." Song Qingshu's face instantly darkened. "Are you messing with me?" The corners of Ruan Xingzhu's lips curled up slightly. She began to explain, "Azu and Ozzy think they are my daughters. I also admit to the public that they are my daughters, but in reality, I'm not their biological mother." Then, Ruan Xingzhu also sighed. "Although I know that it's easier for me to save my life if I don't say this, I also don't want to carry that kind of dirty reputation." What's going on?" Song Qingshu was a little confused. This relationship was a little too messy. "This involves a secret from back then. I don't want to say it. You just need to know that we're not biological mother and daughter." Ruan Xingzhu bit her lips and shifted her face to the side. Song Qingshu sneered. "Do you have any other choice at this time?" Seeing that she was still a little stubborn, he decided to change his approach. "Then answer me first. Is their father Duan Zhengchun?" "Yes," Ruan Xingzhu answered instinctively. Then, she revealed a shocked expression. "You even know this?" "But that's right. Since you know the nursery rhyme on the bronze plate, it's normal for you to know this." "Then tell me about your relationship with Duan Zhengchun." Song Qingshu continued to ask. Ruan Xingzhu frowned. She was clearly still a little hesitant. Song Qingshu became impatient. "Don't test my patience. The safety of this ship and the Ruan family are all in your hands. Forget it. It doesn't matter if I tell you." Only then did Ruan Xingzhu slowly explain what happened back then. Minister Han has always had great ambitions. He was concerned about the recovery of the Central Plains, so he sent many spies to various countries in advance. At that time, I was sent to get close to Duan Zhengshun, the Jinan Prince of the Supreme Court. Duan Zhengshun can be said to be above tens of thousands of people in Dali. Moreover, Emperor Baoding doesn't have an heir. According to reliable intelligence, he has always had the idea of avoiding the throne and becoming a monk. In the future, the throne will most likely fall into Duan Zhengchuan's hands. So, Minister Han sent me to get close to him in advance. Song Qingshu was secretly shocked. This Han Xingzhou was really farsighted. More than 10 years ago, he had also sent Han Qianye to the Jin Kingdom. Now, he knew that Ruan Xingzhu had also been sent to Dali to get close to Duan Zhengshun. This plan was really profound. Unfortunately, man proposes, God disposes. Duan Zhengshun is a playboy. I used a few tricks to gain his trust. However, I also knew that although he liked me, he never had the idea of marrying me. To put it nicely, he was deeply in love with me. To put it bluntly, what he loved the most was the power and position of his brother. Back then, Dali was in chaos. The reason why Emperor Baoding could ascend to the throne was because he had the help of the most powerful force in the country, the Bai tribe. In return, the daughter of the Bai tribe's leader, Dao Baifeng, became the princess of the Jinan prince. So, no matter how much Duan Zhengshun pledged his undying love to other women, he couldn't bring back his lover. Otherwise, if he angered the Bai tribe, his brother might not be able to sit firmly on the throne. Ruan Xingzhu's tone was full of disdain when she spoke of this matter. It was obvious that she was very disdainful of Duan Zhengchuan's reputation for being deeply in love. Song Qingshu frowned. Are you jealous? You feel like a resentful woman who has been abandoned. Chapter 1691. Another matter? Song Qingshu felt that there was a great secret behind this and immediately became interested. Ruan Xingzhu nodded and looked at the starry sky, as if she was immersed in her memories. Although I didn't like Duan Zhengshun back then, I had to continue the mission that Minister Han gave me, so I always feigned civility with him. Who knew that something would happen later? One day, my younger sister suddenly came to find me, but I had to leave for a period of time because I had something important to do and couldn't accompany her, so I let her play by herself at Little Mirror Lake. Who knew that not long after I left, Duan Zhengshun, that bastard, came. Because my younger sister looked very similar to me, he mistook her for me. My younger sister, in a moment of playfulness, also began to pretend to be me. Although I was usually close to Duan Zhengshun, I had a sense of propriety and always kept a sufficient distance from him. However, my younger sister had been raised in a boudoir since she was young, so how could she resist the methods of an experienced womanizer? It didn't take long for her body and mind to fall. Song Qingshu's eyebrows twitched when he heard this. The women of the Ruan family really like to play cosplay, but how could they not get their shoes wet if they often walk by the roadside? Almost all women would fall for this, such as Azu, Ruan Xingzhu, and her younger sister. By the time I found out, it was already too late. She had already devoted herself to Duan Zhengshun. Ruan Xingzhu sighed faintly. I tried to persuade her, but she still refused to come to her senses. I had no choice but to make the best of it. During that time, Duan Zhengshun kept pressuring me, so I could let her replace me, Song Qingshu sneered. Replace you to sleep with him? He knew that if he wanted to gain Duan Zhengchuan's true trust, the two of them had to have the most intimate relationship. Ruan Xingzhu did not refute. You can put it that way. Although I wanted to minimize the loss, it wasn't that I didn't have such thoughts. My younger sister gladly accepted my proposal. For a young girl who is in love, as long as she can stay with her lover, she doesn't care about anything else. Ruan Xingzhu then changed the topic. Unfortunately, the good times don't last long. After a few months, Duan Zhengshun had something to do in Dali, so he left Little Mirror Lake. Although my sister was reluctant, she couldn't go back with him. What's even more troublesome is that not long after that Duan guy left, my sister found out that she was pregnant. Ruan Xingzhu said hatefully. After that Duan guy left, there was no news at all. My sister waited bitterly, but to no avail. She didn't listen to my advice and decided to give birth to the child. Our Ruan family can also be considered a prominent family in Jiangnan. If people know that the young lady of our family had an affair with a man and got pregnant before marriage, neither our father nor the Ruan family can afford to lose face. Hearing Ruan Xingzhu's words, Song Qingshu nodded to himself. The Southern Song dynasty was very popular. If this matter were spread, it would indeed be a huge scandal. It would be very difficult for a big family to tolerate such a thing. Ruan Xingzhu continued. There was no other way. In order to keep a secret, I could only let my sister continue to recuperate at Little Mirror Lake to prevent the news from leaking. After giving birth to the child, I secretly sent the child to a farmer's family. Song Qingshu interrupted. I'm afraid your sister wouldn't agree to this. Ruan Xingzhu's face was frosty. She was young and insensible. She didn't know the dangers of the world. As her sister, I naturally had to be more ruthless. Song Qingshu could imagine how many times the sisters had quarreled over this matter. They might have even turned against each other. Of course, he also understood Ruan Xingzhu's actions. She did it to protect her sister to the greatest extent. However, her sister might not have appreciated it. During that time, my sister was very unhappy. At that time, my younger sister was very unhappy. She seemed to have lost her soul. I was at my wit's end. I didn't know if I was lucky or unlucky. Later on, that Duan fellow came to Little Mirror Lake. When Ruan Xingzhu talked about this, her nails dug in her flesh. When my younger sister saw him, all her worries disappeared. The two of them had a few more happy months. Then Duan Jingchun left again. Even without her saying it, Song Qingshu could already guess what happened next. That's right, Ruan Xingzhu said hatefully. Unlike before, he never came back after he left. Coincidentally, my sister got pregnant again. Song Qingshu had a strange expression on his face. He thought to himself, Duan Zhengchuan's ability to produce children is quite strong. It's just that his ability to produce sons is too poor. My sister's reaction this time was much calmer than before. After I sent her daughter away on her behalf, she didn't react too much. I knew that she was thinking about Duan Zhengchun and hoped that he would come back and take her away. When she mentioned the past, Ruan Xingzhu's tone was filled with pity for her sister. Unfortunately, she couldn't wait for Duan Jingchun to come back. She always thought that he was busy with national affairs and had no time to spare. However, through my own intelligence network, I found out that he was actually very intimate with a woman from Montoa Villa in the Jiangnan area. Song Qingshu's expression changed. He knew that the woman she was talking about was Li Qingluo. At that time, Li Qingluo was worried that she would be persecuted by Qinhui. In order to dispel his doubts, she pretended to get close to Duan Zhengchun, that playboy. I told my sister about this, but she didn't believe me no matter what. In the end, she sneaked out to look for him. In the end, when she came back, she was in a daze. Not long after, she passed away from depression. When Ruan Xingzhu mentioned the past, a crystalline tear unknowingly streaked down her fair cheeks. Passed away? Song Qingshu was shocked. He did not expect that Azu and Zi's mother was already gone. Ruan Xingzhu nodded. After my sister passed away, I secretly took care of her two daughters. I even concealed my identity and secretly taught Azu the art of disguise. Song Qingshu nodded secretly. He had always wondered how Azu had learned the art of disguise since she was an orphan. Only now did he understand what was going on. It's a pity that Z went missing, Ruan Xingzhu said with a frown. During that time, I was busy with my sister's funeral. When I went to look for Z, I found that the family that adopted Z had already left. I searched for many years, but I couldn't find her whereabouts. Z later went to Xingxiu sect. Song Qingshu suddenly thought of something. Hey, didn't Z and Azu acknowledge each other at Little Mirror Lake? At that time, you were still with Duan Jingchun? That's right. Ruan Xingzhu sighed. As secret agents, we had no choice. Although we hated Duan Jingchun, we could only force a smile and approach him to continue spying for information. At the same time, We were prepared to use me as a spy in the future. Since ancient times, being a spy has always been the most dangerous and painful thing. Song Qing-shu was filled with emotion. Of course, that guy called Bond was an exception. Because of this, Pearl has always been unhappy with me. Ruan Xingzhu shifted her gaze to her room. Song Qing-shu was stunned. Why? Ruan Xingzhu smiled bitterly. Although Pearl is my servant, she is closer to my sister. So she can't understand that Duan Zhengchun clearly killed my sister. Not only did I not avenge her, but I also continued to be the enemy's lover, because I was worried that she would do something extreme to Duan Zhengchun in a moment of impulse. I never dared to bring her along when I saw Duan Zhengchun. Song Qing-shu said indifferently, "What you did was correct. Even though Duan Zhengchun's martial arts aren't worth mentioning in front of a true expert, it's still far from something a servant girl can deal with. It's also easy to expose your identity, causing all of your hard work to go down the drain." A hint of surprise appeared in Ruan Xingzhu's eyes. "I didn't expect you to understand me. All these years, my heart has been filled with torment." Song Qing-shu shook his head. "I only understand why you didn't let Pearl come into contact with Duan Zhengchun. I don't agree with you not avenging your sister. I had no choice. Our Ruan family has received great kindness from the Han family for generations. We have to repay it." Ruan Xingzhu bit her lips. A hint of stubbornness flashed across her face. "Although I can't agree, from a certain point of view, I do admire you. You have the air of an ancient chivalrous man." Song Qing-shu said. Ruan Xingzhu smiled mournfully. "I can't even avenge my sister. How can I be called chivalrous? Forgive me for speaking bluntly. Although Duan Zhengchun is somewhat of a scumbag, that matter was your sister's wishful thinking. It is a bit unfair to blame it all on him." Although Song Qing-shu didn't like Duan Zhengchun, he didn't approve of Duan Zhengchun paying with his life. "I don't want to talk about the past anymore." Ruan Xingzhu changed the topic. "Speak. Since you know I'm not Zi's mother, you don't have any more worries. How do you plan to deal with me?" The river wind blew gently, and her skirt fluttered. Her black hair was as smooth as ripples. Under the moonlight, it glowed. Ruan Xingzhu appeared hazy and beautiful. However, Song Qing-shu had no time to admire her beauty. Instead, he was thinking about how to deal with her. From now on, the Ruan family will rely on Golden Snake Camp. I can let bygones be bygones. Otherwise, I will remove the entire Ruan family from Jiangnan. Ruan Xingzhu's pupil shrank. However, she still shook her head firmly. "That's impossible. Although I am a woman, I won't betray my master for glory. You are loyal to Han Xingzhou." Her reaction was expected. Song Qing-shu didn't care at all. "Do you know that Han Xingzhou might not be able to overcome this hurdle? When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. Where will the Ruan family go?" The Han family is the #1 family in the two Song dynasties. Now, Prime Minister Han is the head of all the officials. He has many disciples and old officials. How could anything happen to him? Ruan Xingzhu didn't agree with his reasoning at all. The northern expedition suffered heavy losses. Wu Shi, whom he supported, rebelled, which led to the possibility of Sichuan becoming independent. How could Jia Sherdao and Shermi Yuan let go of such a good opportunity? At this time, all they need is a little push, and the whole thing will collapse. Song Qing-shu vaguely remembered that in history, Han Xingzhou lost power after the failure of the northern expedition. As for the specifics, he couldn't remember. However, now that he was in this world, he had plenty of information from all aspects. He could completely determine that Han Xingzhou was finished. So this time, I came to Sichuan to reverse the situation and give Prime Minister Han a chance to breathe. Ruan Xingzhu reached out and pulled the sleeve of the man next to her. "I beg you, for the sake of your friendship with Prime Minister Han in the past, even if you want to take revenge, wait until after the Sichuan incident. Let me do one last thing for Prime Minister Han first. What do I get for agreeing?" Song Qing-shu looked at her with a playful expression. Feeling his burning gaze, Ruan Xingzhu couldn't help but feel dizzy. She lowered her head and whispered, "As long as you agree, I can do anything you want me to." She didn't expect to say such shameful words. However, as an ace spy, she was good at using everything as a weapon. This time, however, she didn't know how much of her word were sincere and how much was fake. Chapter 1692. The king of Qi is surrounded by fairy-like beauties. How can a woman like me be interested in them? Although Ruan Xingzhu said it casually, she still looked embarrassed. She had tried to seduce him, but she was rejected. Any woman would find it hard to get over it. Madam, you don't have to pretend to be pitiful. You've been a secret agent for Hanzhou for years, and you never forget to take advantage of your advantages. Song Qingshu was not moved at all. Ruan Xingzhu smiled. It's a professional habit. I hope you can forgive me. What do you want to do to make me agree? She was still trying to pull a fast one on him. Usually, a person's rage would be at its highest when they first learned that they had been deceived. As long as this period of time passed, no matter how great their rage was, it would be resolved with time, making it much easier to deal with them. That was why she was determined to delay the other party's revenge no matter the cost. I just said that the Ruan family will submit to the Golden Snake Camp, Song Qingshu said lightly. Ruan Xingzhu frowned. That's the only thing I can't accept. Please change your request. Song Qingshu somewhat appreciated her loyalty and said, Madam, don't be in a hurry to refuse. Why don't you add a condition? If Han Xingzhou can turn the tide this time, this agreement will be invalid. If Han Xingzhou falls this time, the Ruan family will submit to me. What do you think? Ruan Xingzhu opened her mouth and wanted to refuse, but the condition made her a little bit tempted. Seeing that she was tempted, Song Qingshu added, the Ruan family has been working for Han Xingzhou for years, and Jia Shidao and Shimiyuan have long seen them as a thorn in their side. If Han Xingzhou falls, you will lose his protection. I don't need to tell you what will happen to the Ruan family. Also, let me remind you that it will be impossible for you to change your family. There are two big royal merchants in the southern Song dynasty. The Ruan family is in the Central Territory, and the Shui family is in the overseas. There have been all kinds of competitions over the years. If you want to surrender, will the Shui family accept you? As a senior advisor of Han Xingzhou, Ruan Xingzhu knew the close relationship between the Shui family, the Jia family, the Shi family, and the Wang family. Even if Jia Shidao was willing to accept them, he would give up because of the Shui family. Okay, I promise you. Ruan Xingzhu bit her lip. After all, this suggestion was beneficial to the Ruan clan. She had no reason to reject it. Let's wait and see. Song Qingshu revealed a confident smile. After saying that, he turned around and prepared to leave. Wait, Ruan Xingzhu hurriedly called out to him. Under his puzzled gaze, her fair cheeks gradually blushed. You're leaving just like that? What else? Song Qingshu asked matter-of-factly. Ruan Xingzhu stamped her feet and whispered, You took advantage of me just now. Are you going to let it go just like that? Because they had just reached an agreement, she was not as afraid as she was at the beginning. She even regained some of her usual naughtiness. Taking advantage? Song Qingshu said angrily, You schemed to seduce me, and I haven't even settled the score with you yet. Seduce? It was the first time Ruan Xingzhu had heard of this word, but it didn't stop her from understanding its literal meaning. She was so angry that she almost passed out. Since we've just come to an agreement, for the sake of our future cooperation, I'll temporarily forget about you seducing and raping me. However, I'm not done with you bullying. Song Qingshu left these words and quickly drifted away. Only Ruan Xingzhu was left there alone. She gritted her teeth and said, I've never seen such a shameless person. But as she cursed, she suddenly burst into laughter. She quickly covered her face and felt the heat on her skin. She couldn't help but feel a little dazed. Meanwhile, when Song Qingshu returned to his room, the guards at the door were already used to him going in and out of the master's bedroom. None of them were stupid enough to stop him. Ren Yingying was still lying quietly on the bed. It was obvious that she had been worried for the past few days. He gently caressed her forehead and relaxed her tightly furrowed brows. He cursed in his heart. It's all that demoness Ruan Xingzhu's fault. However, in his mind, he couldn't help but recall the scene of him flipping the red waves. Her passion and gentleness could melt a man of steel into a ball of softness. It's a pity that I didn't know it was her. Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't help but imagine what would have happened if he had known. I've sinned, I've sinned. Song Qingshu hurriedly dispelled the evil thoughts in his heart. He kept his mind clear and quickly fell asleep. The next day, Ren Yingying kept asking about what happened between the two of them. Song Qingshu smiled bitterly and said, Yingying, I know you're angry that I didn't recognize the impostor at first, but my attention was attracted by the people of the Isle of Heroes. I was completely focused on Emperor Liang's treasure, so I naturally neglected it. Oh, so I'm not as important as the treasure in your heart. Ren Yingying snorted. Her pouting lips showed how unhappy she was. In fact, with her personality, she didn't mind this, nor did she mind that she had been imprisoned for so long. What she minded was that her lover had actually mistaken another woman for her. It made her feel a strong sense of defeat. You know that's not what I meant. Song Qingshu hurriedly began to coax her. In my heart, even 10 treasures can't compare to a single strand of your hair. Ren Yingying snorted. That won't do. Now that there are so many people vying for the throne, we need money for the army, horses, and rations. If there really are 10 treasures, I'll cut off all my hair and become a nun to get them back for you. Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh, but he felt warm in his heart. Then there will definitely be a lot of people who believe in Buddhism. Why? Ren Yingying was startled, not understanding what he meant. Song Qingshu stroked her hair and said, because people will pretend to go to the nunnery to offer incense just to see a beautiful nun. Bah, glib tongue. Ren Yingying blushed and spat. Don't think that I forgive you. I know you deliberately didn't recognize Madame Ruan in order to take advantage of her justifiably. I'm really wronged. Song Qingshu shouted. But when he thought that he really took advantage of Madame Ruan, he couldn't help but feel a little guilty and his tone became weaker. Really? Then tell me, you have to warm my meridians every day. With your cultivation, let alone other people, how can you not notice it? Ren Yingying said a little angrily. Suddenly, her face turned red. Not to mention that our physical characteristics are completely different. She is a master of disguise. She has planned everything well. She told me that her heavenly Gue came, so it was naturally inconvenient for me to have physical contact with her. Song Qingshu explained. Really? Ren Yingying's eyes lit up, and the resentment in her heart eased a little. You really didn't touch her during this time? No, I don't think so. Song Qingshu was a little guilty, and the last word was almost inaudible. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. After getting permission, Ruan Xingzhu leisurely walked in. Her skirt fluttered in the wind, and her skin was sparkling. Her swan-like neck appeared smooth and elegant. There was a hint of a charming smile on her face. However, the most attractive thing about her was her round and soft waist. When it swayed gently, it was like a snake that was slowly twisting. It made one's heart beat faster uncontrollably. Song Qingshu couldn't help but think of that soft and moving waist from last night. That kind of vitality and gentleness made it hard for people to forget. He didn't hide his gaze, but openly admired the curves of the young woman's body in front of him. Feeling his gaze, Ruan Xingzhu didn't show the slightest shyness. Instead, she openly showed in front of him. She was a top-secret agent and knew how to behave. She showed the temptation of her body, but didn't make people feel that she was stroking her hair coquettishly, which would give people a sense of contempt and cheap. Young lady Run, this time I specially came to apologize to you. Ruan Xingzhu didn't forget the original purpose of this trip. As she spoke, she personally held a set of gorgeous clothes made from the finest shoe embroidery. Another wooden plate was filled with a few exquisite pieces of jewelry. They weren't the kind that were blindly expensive. Instead, they were very compatible with Ren Yingying's temperament. Sure enough, Ren Yingying was a little happy at first sight, but she was the dignified saintess of Sun Moon's sect, so how could she be bought over by these things? She turned her face away and said coldly, I don't dare to take Madame's things. Who knows when I'll unknowingly fall into your trap again. A few days ago, She chatted with Ruan Xingzhu very congenially, and in her heart, she regarded her as half a friend. But now that she knew that Ruan Xingzhu had other intentions, she naturally felt suffocated. Young Lady Run, you may not know this, but the main reason why I did what I did was that I've always admired Prince Song's great name. I wanted to rely on him, but I was worried that the rumors were wrong. I wanted to get to know his true side at a closer distance. After all, I'm responsible for the future and lives of the hundreds of people in the Ruan clan. Ruan Xingzhu was a smart woman. She knew that no matter how much she apologized to Ren Yingying, she was afraid that Ren Yingying wouldn't forgive her. But she could see that Ren Yingying cared a lot about her lover's career, so she started with Song Qingshu and guided everything to proper business. Ren Yingying's heart was tied to her lover. Knowing that he had obtained another powerful aid, the little bit of unhappiness in her happiness naturally vanished like smoke in thin air. Oh, is that really the case? Ren Yingying's attention was indeed diverted. Song Qingshu naturally guessed what little trick Ruan Xingzhu was playing. He looked at her deeply, but didn't expose her. Yes, Madame Ruan has decided to rely on the Golden Snake Battalion. But Ruan Xingzhu silently mouthed, reminding him that there were conditions, and it wasn't certain whether he would rely on them in the end. Song Qingshu directly ignored her and began to ask about the situation of the Ruan clan. Ruan Xingzhu knew that she had to show her sincerity, so she didn't hide anything. But when it came to the most important secrets, she just skimmed over them. Song Qingshu knew that he couldn't be too hasty, so he didn't mind. After asking about enough, he began to ask about the Yang clan in Sichuan. By the way, you seem to have married into the Yang clan in Sichuan. What's your husband's name? My husband's surname is Yang, and his name is Zhenzhong. He's the Xingyuan Prefecture's judge and the Dan Army's Jijun. Ruan Xingzhu unconsciously added, our Ruan clan and the Yang clan only have a political marriage. Usually, we live our own lives. He's busy with government affairs, and I'm busy with imperial business. We rarely see each other more than a few times a year. Hearing her last sentence, Song Qingshu was startled. He couldn't help but look at her and happened to meet her gaze. Both of them trembled and subconsciously averted their gazes. They had just clapped for love with her last night, but now they were talking about her husband's situation. Something felt strange. Chapter 1693. After listening to Ruan Xingzhu's explanation, Song Qingshu also understood the general situation of the Yang family. The current family head of the Yang family was her husband, Yang Zhenzhong. He also had a second brother, Yang Jiyuan, who was the supervisor of Hejiang Tsang in Xingzhou. Most of the other family members were officials in various parts of Sichuan. Although the official positions were not prominent, and some are not even officials, they were all important departments with real power. Therefore, they formed a huge network. At the same time, many of the Yang family members were doing business. With the protection of this network, coupled with the strong alliance with the Ruan family, they could be said to be powerful in Sichuan. They were fully deserving of being a prominent family. The Yang family is indeed second only to the Wu family in West Shu. Song Qingshu was full of praise. The reason why the Wu family could be first was because Wu Chong and Wu Lin were here in the past. The Wu family's people ran the business for them. However, after Sichuan was conquered by the Mongols, the Wu family's influence was not as strong as before. They might not even be able to compete with the Yang family now. Moreover, unlike the Wu family who attracted the wind, the Yang family was a model example of making a fortune in silence. After all, the official position of the family head was just a general judge, and the second in command was only the supervisor of Hejiang Tsang in Xingzhou. In the eyes of the big shots in the court, they were just small officials. Ruan Xingzhu was also a little proud. She smiled and said, if young master is interested, I will introduce the Yang family to you when we arrive in Sichuan. I believe Zhenzhong and the others will be very interested in cooperating with young master. Then I will have to trouble madam. Song Qingshu was having a headache. If he could get the support of the Yang family, he could easily influence Sichuan. Although it was not as exaggerated as secretly controlling Sichuan, it was still possible to influence a quarter or a third of Sichuan. However, The problem now was that he had just slept with the wife of the family head yesterday. If the Yang family knew about this, he would have one more big enemy out of thin air. Song Qing-shu had long passed the age of ignoring everything for physical pleasure. He would think more about the influence behind the scenes. If he had known in advance that it was Madame Ruan last night, no matter how seductive she was, he would not have touched her. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in this world. This woman actually did not reveal her identity at that critical moment yesterday. Did she do it on purpose? Song Qing-shu looked at the woman in front of him suspiciously. She was dressed in a simple, elegant, and pure white dress. She even looked like a fairy, but who knew if she was two-faced or not? Feeling his gaze, Ruan Xingzhu blushed and turned her face slightly to the side. Feeling his gaze, Ruan Xingzhu blushed and turned her face slightly to the side unnaturally. As if sensing her doubt, Ruan Xingzhu changed the topic. Gongzi, we're about to enter Sichuan. How are we going to sail? Are we going to May first? Qingshu thought for a word. Madame Ruan, Yin, Qingshu Xian Qingshu is. I will Qingshu. It will be very inconvenient to access the Yamei Mountains in the future. Now that he and Zhou were not in charge of the Yamei Mountains, once the news was leaked, the remaining disciples might not be able to protect the treasures. If it caused trouble to the Yamei sect, he would not be able to face Zhou. Surprise flashed in Ruan Xingzhu's eyes, but she quickly nodded and said, "No problem." Song Qingshu looked into her eyes and said meaningfully, "What I mean is not to borrow the power of the Yang family." Because of the matter between him and Ruan Xingzhu, the Yang family was like a time bomb. He did not dare to bet on them. Ruan Xingzhu was startled, but she quickly realized what he was worried about. Her heart was beating wildly, and she pursed her lips and smiled. Our Ruan family is a first-class imperial merchant after all. Who knows how much goods we have to transport on a daily basis. Although this batch of goods is hot, it is not a problem for us. All right, I will leave it with you for now. Song Qingshu waved his hand and gestured for her to leave. After Ruan Xingzhu left, Reningying could not help but ask, "Song, do you really trust this woman? This woman speaks half-truths." "Of course, I can't trust her." Song Qingshu smiled. Ren Yingying could not help but say, "Then why did you let her keep the treasures? Are you going to throw the treasures at her because she is beautiful?" Song Qingshu laughed. "No matter how beautiful she is not as beautiful as you. Moreover, she is a married woman." Ren Yingying pouted. "Who doesn't know you like that? You love to bully married women." Song Qingshu was drinking tea. He almost spat it out when he heard that. "Who said that? This is slander." Ren Yingying looked at him playfully. The Night Princess and Miss Zhou all said the same thing. Ahem, don't listen to their nonsense. Song Qingshu was speechless. Had his reputation been so bad? I just want to make it easier to transport the treasures back to Golden Snake Camp after the matter in Sichuan is over. In this era, the road was tortuous and time-consuming. It was also very unsafe. Therefore, whether it was marching to war or transporting goods, the waterways would be used. Song Qingshu's sphere of influence had not yet covered Sichuan, so he could not transport the treasures back to Golden Snake Camp by himself. Now, the best way was to borrow the Ruan family's merchant ship. After all, the Ruan family was the #1 imperial merchant in the world. The checkpoints along the Yangtze River would let them pass, so they could directly transport the treasures to Yangzhou. Once they reached Yangzhou's territory, the treasures would be safe. Hearing his explanation, Ren Yingying was relieved, but she was still a little worried. What if Madame Ruan becomes greedy and wants to take the treasures for herself? Greed will definitely arise. The key is whether there are effective checks and balances. Song Qingshu patted her little hand. Don't worry, I have a way to control her. Ren Yingying opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she did not say it. By the way, your Sun Moon sect should have a branch in Sichuan, right? Song Qingshu was perfecting all the details in his mind, so he did not notice her reaction. Ren Yingying came back to her senses and nodded. Yes, but these people are good at fighting in Jianghu. If they want to use them in the court, I'm afraid, Song Qingshu smiled. Don't worry, they don't need to be very capable. We just need to transfer some people to help keep an eye on the place where Ruan Xingzhu keeps the treasures and inform us if there is any unusual movement. Although he was confident that he could control Ruan Xingzhu, he still needed someone to keep an eye on her, just in case. Ren Ying could not help but laugh. That's not a problem. If they can't even keep an eye on her, the Sun Moon sect doesn't need to mingle in Jianghu. You haven't taught me to play the guqin for a long time. Today, continue to teach me the smiling, proud wanderer. Song Qingshu took a guqin and came over. Humph, I can hear you and Madame Ruan playing the guqin in the secret room these days. You can go to her. Ren Ying could not help but say sourly. Even now, she was still brooding over it. Song Qingshu laughed awkwardly. You see, Madame Ruan has even prepared to teach me to play the guqin. It's really painstaking. It's not my fault that I couldn't recognize her for a while. Ren Ying snorted. Forget it. Seeing that you saved me in the end, I won't argue with you. All right, it's not good for us to stay in Madame Ruan's bedroom. Let's move back first. Actually, she was not a woman who was easily jealous. Normally, even if her lover took a concubine, she would not have the slightest objection. However, the situation this time was too strange. The key was that Ruan Xingzhu had been impersonating her identity to be with her lover for the past few days. This was unbearable. Therefore, she could not help but complain for a while. However, she had gradually calmed down. Song Qingshu also felt that it was inappropriate to enter and leave Ruan Xingzhu's bedroom so openly. He still wanted to cooperate with the Sichuan Yang family. If any rumors were spread to her husband, it would really increase the number of variables. The two quickly returned to their own rooms. Then, they began to play the guqin on the deck, living the life of a celestial couple. Ruan Xingzhu stood in the distance and silently watched the two show off their affection. Thinking about how the woman next to Song Qingshu was still herself, she could not help but feel a little absent-minded. Pearl, who was beside her, laughed and said, Madam, are you jealous? Ruan Xingzhu spat and said, Why would I be jealous? I'm just a little shaken. I haven't gotten over my identity yet. The reason why she had been successful in impersonating others was not only because of her excellent disguise skills, but also because of her acting skills. She knew how to hypnotize herself and put herself in the shoes of the target. That way, even she would think that she was the target. Naturally, it would not be easy for her to reveal any flaws. Of course, this also had a side effect. It was easy for her to be immersed in the target's life and not be able to get out of it for a while. Every time, she would need to spend some time afterward to get used to it. This time, impersonating Ren Ying could be said to have given her all. She had never been so engrossed in her acting before. Subconsciously, she had treated herself as Ren Ying. She had even replicated Ren Ying's love for her lover. Unfortunately, in the end, she still fell short of success. That was fine. The biggest problem was that normally she would take the initiative to return to her identity. That way, she would be able to quickly get out of her disguise. But this time, she had been seen through by her opponent. She had been forced out of her disguise. This caused many of the emotions and emotions of her identity as Ren Ying to remain in her memory. For example, she even felt that she had an inexplicable fondness for Song Qingshu. In the dead of the night, she would recall the scene of the two of them sticking to each other like glue that night, and her heart would race and she would toss and turn in bed. Of course, she knew that this was not love, but she knew that if she continued to immerse herself in these emotions, it would be hard to avoid falling in love with him. Thinking of her identity as a married woman, she could not help but sigh. What a sin! Madam, are we really going to rely on him? Pearl continued to ask. Ruan Xingzhu grunted. Of course not. But we can use this as an excuse to deal with him. Then has the madam thought of a way to get the treasure? Pearl laughed strangely. Why don't you consider my suggestion? Use a honey trap. Miss Run is already by his side. You still want to use a honey trap? Do you want us to die faster? Ruan Xingzhu pulled on the maid's ear. She did not know what she was thinking, but she felt her entire body soften. Chapter 1694. Hearing her words, Song Qingshu almost spat out a mouthful of blood. God, you're not playing with me like this, are you? Then he suddenly reached out his hand and began to pinch Ren Yingying's face. Are you pretending to be me again? Ren Yingying was ashamed and angry. She pushed his hand away. Don't fool around. It's true. Song Qingshu recalled last month's time and finally sighed dejectedly. Seems like it's really this time. Ren Yingying was also a little embarrassed. She muttered with a red face, I don't know what's wrong with your body. You think about it all day long. If other people were like you, even if they were made of iron, they would also be useless. Song Qingshu smiled sheepishly. It's probably because of the blissful Diana that I'm so anxious every day. I'm like a human pile driver. Ren Yingying couldn't help but feel a little worried. Will it hurt your body? Song Qingshu patted his chest. Don't worry. I'm in good health now. What's more, this kind of thing is the mutual support of yin and yang. It follows the supreme law of the universe. The Yellow Emperor has 3,000 women. He not only didn't die of sperm exhaustion, but also ascended to heaven. Nonsense. Don't be serious. Ren Yingying blushed and spat. She suddenly thought of something and couldn't help but change her face slightly. You do it every day. How can nothing happen between you and Madame Ruan these days? Nothing really happened. Song Qingshu explained with a guilty conscience. Ren Yingying looked at him quietly. After a long time, she smiled slightly. Song Qingshu, do you know what I like about you? Song Qingshu was stunned and couldn't help but hold her slightly in his arms. I'm such an excellent man. Shouldn't you like everything? Shameless. Ren Yingying secretly pinched his waist and continued. Most capable men in this world have 3 or 4 wives. For example, my father had a few concubines in the past. Invincible East also had a group of concubines in the past. If they wanted to have a wife, they would do so without any hesitation. They would never ask for a woman's permission, nor would they care about a woman's feelings. But you're different. You'll feel guilty, you'll feel sorry for us, and you'll explain to us in a panic. I feel like you treat us women as equals from the bottom of your heart. You're completely different from the other men in this world. Song Qingshu was ashamed. After all, he came from a future world where equality between men and women was important. Some of his habits would instinctively show, but he didn't expect the other party to look at him in a different light. Yingying, you're embarrassing me. What's there to be embarrassed about? Ren Yingying pursed her lips and smiled. You are now a Wangye with 100,000 elite troops under your command, 1,000 miles of fertile land. In terms of martial arts and status, you are much higher than my father and Uncle Dongfang. We're 3 wives and 4 concubines. What's more, if you aspire to the world, you should learn from powerful figures like Emperor Guangwu and Emperor Taizu of the Ming Dynasty, and use marriage to win over the power of the noble families. Now the Ruan family is the first royal merchant in the world. If you can win Madame Ruan's heart and win over the Ruan family, I'll be more than happy. Why would I be jealous? Song Qingshu was stunned. He didn't expect Ren Yingying to be so open-minded, and he understood that her open-mindedness was different from Shuang Er's open-mindedness. Shuang Er was the traditional kind of woman, gentle and kind. She regarded her husband as the sky. As long as her husband was happy, she was happy. Ren Yingying stood at a higher level. She directly analyzed the gains and losses, and everything was beneficial to the overall situation. To a certain extent, she was somewhat similar to Zhao Min. Therefore, this kind of woman who was originally in a high position had a really different vision and mind. Of course, this also depended on the person. Many women were also blessed by the heavens, but they were far from this kind of bearing. You don't have to hide it from me. During the day, you two flirted with each other. Something must have happened. Ren Yingying's eyes flashed with wisdom. It just so happens that my body is very tired now. Go find Ruan for it. No matter what method you use, you must completely conquer her and pull the Ruan family to our side. Song Qingshu looked at her in the wind. Yingying, are you joking? He, who came from the future, naturally knew the tricks of these women. This was not a multiple-choice question at all, but the most classic suicide question. Don't think too much, I'm serious. Ren Ying smiled slyly. But I also have another thought. Previously, she made me so miserable. In the future, after she enters the family, see how I will deal with her. Song Qingshu listened with black lines on his forehead. She's a married woman. What do you mean by entering the family? Today's world is in chaos. Even the Empress and Wang Fei are precarious, let alone a member of a noble family, Ren Ying said as she pushed him out. Moreover, looking at her situation, the two most likely have a political marriage. They can only meet a few times a year. How can there be any feelings? Song Qingshu's eyes flashed. Inside, Ren Ying was full of radiance, causing everyone to forget that she was a sage nun who came from the devil cult. After being influenced for more than a decade, how could she not have a bit of a black-bellied side? However, he liked her like this more because she was more three-dimensional and more like a woman and not like an illusory illusion. Finally, under Ren Ying's urging, Song Qingshu walked out of the room. At the same time, he secretly thought, I've seen a movie called something like Follow the Orders to Pick Up Girls. Does what I did today count? Why does it feel weird? Of course, he would not be blinded by women. He clearly knew that his goal was to control Ruan Xingzhu and the Ruan family. Unknowingly, he arrived at the top floor of the ship where Ruan Xingzhu's bedroom was. Who would have thought that the guards would look at each other and then move out of the way without saying a word? This caused Song Qingshu to be slightly dumbfounded. What situation was this? Originally, he had planned on waiting here for a while and let them go report. Who knew that they would directly let him pass? However, he did not worry about any tricks and directly walked up the stairs. A guard behind him hesitantly said to his companion, Is it not good for us to do this? This is called having poor eyesight. Did you forget that 2 days ago, Prince Song spent the night in Madam's room? Our Madam is a married woman. This kind of thing naturally cannot be publicized. You specifically want to ask her, how do you expect her to respond to you? The older companion lectured him in a serious tone. The guard nodded. Third brother, you're the most thoughtful. A hint of smugness flashed across the older guard's face. Moreover, it's not like you haven't seen Prince Song's martial arts. If he really want to go up, how can we stop him? He is willing to stop to give us face. Naturally, we have to be tactful and not take advantage of him. Another guard could not help but say, but if this matter is spread out and is known by the son-in-law, it is inevitable that he will vent his anger on us. The older guard snorted. We have not received any kindness from the son-in-law. On the contrary, it is Prince Song who has saved our lives. Of course, we will be on his side. Moreover, this kind of thing, if you don't say it and I don't say it, Madam will naturally not say it. How would the son-in-law know? Although several people deliberately lowered their voices, their whispers did not escape Song Qingshu's eyes and ears. He could not help but laugh. He originally thought that they deliberately let him go because of Madame Ruan's instructions. In his heart, his impression of her was somewhat discounted. In the end, it was these people who privately made their own decisions. People at the bottom most loved to figure out the meaning of the top. In those years, Song Qingshu also climbed up from the bottom. He knew that this was their survival wisdom and philosophy. There was nothing wrong with it. When Song Qingshu arrived outside the door, he found that the door was locked from the inside. However, this was not a problem for him. He gently emitted a wisp of jinqi and lifted the door bolt behind the door. He pushed the door open and walked in. This time, he originally came to intimidate Ruan Xingzhu enough so that she would not dare to have any disloyal thoughts. Naturally, he would not knock on the door like normal. He did not deliberately conceal the sound of his footsteps. However, now that his cultivation had reached the realm of perfection, there was almost no sound when he walked. Thus, Madame Ruan did not notice anything unusual. Suddenly, there was the sound of patter of water in front of him. Furthermore, there was a faint mist. Song Qingshu was startled, thinking that it could not be so coincidental. Bypassing a vermilion pillar, a translucent screen appeared in front of him. However, with his eyesight, a mere screen could not block his view. He saw that Madame Ruan was currently bathing. The mist lingered in the room, making her entire person hazy and magnificent. It made people's hearts tremble. It was as if there were no traces of age on her body. Her skin was like that of a newborn baby, smooth and delicate, white with a hint of red, crystal clear. Her graceful figure caused people to exclaim in admiration. Her slender waist made many young girls feel ashamed of their inferiority. Her slender legs were soft, straight, and light. They were faintly discernible in the water. As they swayed, they set off her proud figure with a peerless elegance, causing thousands of flowers to lose their color. Her entire person was like a young girl, full of youthful vigor. However, it was mixed with a faint, mature charm. There was a strange sense of charm and beauty. At this moment, half of her body was soaking in the hot water. She appeared extremely comfortable and relaxed. Her mouth was even softly humming a Jiangnan folk song. Together with the lingering mist and rippling water, it formed an artistic picture. "Hey, Air, why did you come back?" "Huh? Didn't I lock the door?" Song Qingshu had walked so close that Ruan Xingzhu finally heard the movement. She asked subconsciously, "This Jiangnan folk song, I can hear that Madam is in a good mood right now." Song Qingshu said lightly. Hearing his voice, Ruan Xingzhu finally came to her senses. She was so frightened that she cried out in alarm. She instinctively tore off a light gauze from the screen and used it to cover her chest. Song Qingshu walked to the side of the bathtub and said sarcastically, "It's not like I haven't seen it before. Isn't Madam deceiving herself by doing this?" It was unknown whether it was because she was embarrassed or because of the steam, but at this moment, Ruan Xingzhu's skin was smeared with a layer of rouge. She bit her lip and said, "Young master, you barged into the women's dormitory in the middle of the night without notifying me. I'm afraid that is not the behavior of a gentleman." Song Qingshu shrugged. "I didn't notify you, but the guards at the door let me in. See, even your subordinates know of our relationship. Why do you still need to pretend?" Chapter 1695. Who knew that Song Qingshu would remain indifferent and just stand there? "You change. I'll wait for you." Ruan Xingzhu forced a smile and said, "Young master, you must be joking. How do I change?" Song Qingshu walked to the edge of the wooden tub and hooked his hand under her smooth chin. He looked down at her. "Do you think I'm joking, madam?" Ruan Xingzhu's expression changed. She opened her mouth, but didn't know what to say. Song Qingshu then continued, "Madam, have you forgotten what happened that night so quickly? Which part of your body doesn't have my mark? Do you still need me to avoid it?" Ruan Xingzhu hurriedly explained, "What happened that day was just an accident. I was using the identity of Ren Yingying." "Madam, how long are you going to keep deceiving yourself?" Song Qingshu snorted and interrupted her. "I don't care if you did it unintentionally or on purpose. I'm here to confirm something with you. Young master, please tell me. As long as I can do it, I will definitely die for it," Ruan Xingzhu said hurriedly. "You don't have to use these pretty words to deal with me." Song Qingshu was indifferent. "Would you also die for it if I asked you to serve me in bed?" Ruan Xingzhu's expression changed slightly, but she quickly regained her composure. She chuckled and said, "If young master doesn't mind my appearance, I am willing to serve you." Facing this ace spy who could beat an Oscar-winning actress, Song Qingshu didn't know how many of her words were true and how many were false. Of course, he wouldn't take her service to heart. He went straight to the point. "Madam, you don't have to use your beauty anymore. I came here to confirm that the Ruan family won't betray me." "How could we? Young master has done the Ruan family a great favor. How could we repay kindness with enmity?" Ruan Xingzhu said with a pale face. "As the saying goes, gold moves people's hearts. With such a large amount of treasure, who would believe that you wouldn't be moved?" Song Qingshu said as he looked at her quietly. Ruan Xingzhu hurriedly tried to explain, "Young master." Song Qingshu reached out his hand to stop her from continuing. "You don't have to be so polite. What I want to hear is a specific method. How can I ensure that you won't betray me?" Ruan Xingzhu opened her mouth, but no words came out for a long time. She knew that her usual methods would not work on the man in front of her. However, if she wanted to ensure that she could not betray him, she could only use some methods. No matter what, she did not want to use those methods on herself. Looking at Madame's expression, you must have thought of it. Usually, Madame must have all kinds of checks and balances to control your henchmen. Madame must have wronged you now. As soon as Song Qingshu finished speaking, he reached his hand into the barrel and sucked. A thread of water was swiftly sucked into his hand. Yuan Xingzhu was startled. Before she could react, Song Qingshu raised his hand, and a few sparkling and translucent ice flakes instantly shot into a few major acupoints on her body. All of this happened in an instant. If Tianshan Tonglao was watching from the side, she would also be in awe of his skill. It should be known that the water in the barrel was clearly hot water, but he was able to instantly turn it into thin ice. This skill was truly amazing. However, Yuan Xingzhu did not know any of this. She only felt an icy, cold sensation coming from her acupoints. Following that, she felt as if her entire body was being bitten by millions of ants. This kind of feeling made her cry out involuntarily, "What the hell is this?" Her cry was particularly eye-catching in the silent night. The guards outside the door looked at each other in dismay. One of them could not help but mutter, "I didn't expect that madam, who is usually so obedient, would actually scream so loudly." Another person said, "I find it even more strange that Prince Song is so gentle. I didn't expect him to be so troublesome." The third guard at the side smiled slyly and said, "Isn't that right? If it wasn't for the fact that his wife doesn't feel pain when using her, why wouldn't he do his best to fight back?" Yuan Xingzhu, who was in the room, could not hear these discussions. Otherwise, she would probably die from anger. However, even if she heard it now, she would not have the strength to pursue it. "Madam, you have traveled extensively. You should have heard of the life-death talisman, right?" Song Qingshu examined Yuan Xingzhu and asked with a smile. Yuan Xingzhu was currently in the hot water, but a gust of cold air came out of her body. Her teeth chattered as she replied, "The life-death talisman of the Spirit Vulture Palace?" A trace of surprise flashed through Song Qingshu's eyes. "Madam, you are really knowledgeable." As he spoke, he grabbed her hands. "Madam, don't damage this egg-like delicate skin. I beg you, let me die." Yuan Xingzhu's voice no longer had the usual calmness and routine. Only the weakest pleading was left. Song Qingshu pinched her mouth and stuffed a pill in. He gently lifted her chin. After Yuan Xingzhu swallowed the pill, the horrifying numbness and itchiness in her body gradually disappeared. However, the fear from before still lingered on her face. This pill is not the antidote. It can only temporarily suppress the life-death talisman in your body. Song Qingshu let go of her mouth. Young master is so ruthless. Yuan Xingzhu's previously rosy cheeks were now pale. She looked more delicate and pitiful. Unlike her usual disguise, she now revealed everything naturally, which made her even more attractive than usual. "Ruthless?" Song Qingshu smiled. "Actually, I have other methods to control you. For example, the 3-corpse brain divine pill of the Sun Moon sect. I can plant corpse worms in your head. When it acts up, the worms will break out of the shell and eat your brain. There's also the leopard embryo meridian-changing pill of the Divine Dragon sect. Once it acts up, it can change a person's body shape greatly. Madam is tall and beautiful now, but if it acts up, you will most likely become short and ugly, like a big winter melon." Yuan Xingzhu had heard of these 2 poisons before. After hearing his description, she immediately felt her hair stand on end. Regardless of whether it was the cadaveric worms gnawing on her brain or the transformation of a beautiful woman into a freak, they were both extremely terrifying things. I don't know what young master wants to do. After all, Yuan Xingzhu had experienced great storms and waves. She slowly calmed down and was no longer as afraid as she was at the beginning. She paused and suddenly said with a red face, "Young master, can you let go of my hand?" Just now, when the life-death talisman acted up, he had grabbed her hand to prevent her from scratching her skin. However, because of the previous struggle, the clothes covering her chest had already flown away. Song Qing-shu was startled. Only then did he notice that his eyes were filled with the smoothness of snow. He couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. He let go of her hand with an embarrassed smile, feeling the remaining smoothness on his fingertips. He even somewhat regretted that he had been too hasty last night. Who asked him to not know her real identity at that time? A charming feeling flashed through his mind, and Song Qing-shu regained his clarity. He said in a deep voice, "Since Madam is a businesswoman, then let's talk business. Madam, please take good care of this batch of treasures. In the future, when they are safely delivered to the place I designate, I will cure Madam of the life-death talisman's poison. In addition, I will give you 5% of this batch of treasures as a reward." The reason why he wanted to give 5% as a reward wasn't because he had too much money to burn. It was because he understood that if he wanted a horse to run, he had to feed it. Blindly oppressive policies could easily cause a rebellious mentality, causing the Ruan clan to obey him in public, but oppose him in private, which might bring more troubles. Only by tying the interests of both sides together and sharing weal and woe was the long-term solution. Yuan Xingzhu's entire body had shrunk under the water, only revealing her head. When she heard his words, her expression couldn't help but change. In the beginning, she thought that she would be enslaved by him in the future. She was thinking about how to get rid of him, but when she heard that he was willing to give 5% of the treasures, the amount of treasures in Emperor Liang's batch was huge, so 5% was already quite generous. No, 5% is too little. I want at least 10%. After all, Yuan Xingzhu was a businesswoman. Even though her life was in the hands of the other, she still courted death and started to raise her conditions. Song Qing-shu's expression darkened. "Madam, don't push your luck. Giving you 5% is already an exceptional kindness." However, Yuan Xingzhu stubbornly raised her head. The Ruan clan is also taking a big risk in this matter. The key is that we can't do this without our young master. Therefore, I feel that we are worth 10% of the reward. Song Qing-shu looked at her deeply, and Yuan Xingzhu also stared back at him, unwilling to be outdone. "If young master doesn't agree, we'll just fight to the death." After a long time, Song Qing-shu finally revealed a smile. "I admire Madam's integrity. I believe that you will be a reliable partner in the future." Fine. 10% is 10%. In fact, he had already planned to give 10% of the reward from the very beginning. He deliberately said that to prevent Yuan Xingzhu from asking for too much. As for losing 10% of the treasure, he didn't care too much. After all, the value of the Ruan clan far exceeded that 10% of the treasure. Moreover, he had other plans. If he could completely subdue the Ruan clan, this 10% of the treasure would just be a transfer from his left hand to his right hand. In the end, it would be the entire Ruan clan that would return. However, Yuan Xingzhu didn't expect him to be so straightforward. She immediately became overjoyed and said, "A gentleman's word. A promise cannot be taken back." A smile also appeared on Song Qing-shu's face. Yuan Xingzhu gave him a deep look and suddenly extended her hand. "This won't do. We need to establish a contract. And we don't have pen and paper right now. Let's pinky swear as proof." Pinky swear. Song Qing-shu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You are the dignified clan head of the Ruan clan. You actually use such a childish method? Who said it was childish? This is the most ancient contract method. After pinky swear, I believe that even the world-famous Prince Qi wouldn't break his promise to a little girl like me." Yuan Xingzhu replied with conviction. Song Qing-shu's heart skipped a beat as he looked at her white and tender arms that were exposed above the water surface. Somewhat unnaturally, he averted his gaze and said, "Fine, let's pinky swear as proof." Their fingers came into contact. Feeling her soft and small hand, Song Qing-shu sighed inwardly. "My goodness, she really is an enchantress. It seems that I have to leave quickly. Otherwise, I really won't be able to bear it." He had come here to ensure Yuan Xingzhu's reliability. He didn't have any other objectives. Now that he had accomplished his task, he naturally prepared to leave. Unexpectedly, just as he turned around and was about to leave, Yuan Xingzhu grabbed his hand. He couldn't help but turn his head and stare at her in confusion. "Madam, what do you mean?" Yuan Xingzhu's eyes were somewhat fluttering. Like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water, she said in a low voice, "Just now, because of young master's life-death talisman, the clothes on the screen were all wet. Right now, I can't get up. Can I trouble young master to carry me back to the bed?" Chapter 1696. Yuan Xingzhu didn't understand why she would suddenly say something like that. Was it because the experience last night had been deeply engraved in her heart, and she had experienced something she had never felt before? Of course, she suppressed this thought as soon as it flashed through her mind. She quickly found an honorable reason. Everything was for the benefit of the Yuan family. Getting closer to him would bring more benefits than disadvantages. "Young master, you can take it as an invitation." Yuan Xingzhu also felt that the word seduction was too harsh, so she changed to a more tactful term. Looking at the faintly discernible mermaid in the water, her jade-like arms, delicate collarbones, and milk-white skin, Song Qing-shu had to admit that she was very alluring. However, he still shook his head and refused. "I don't like women who are willing to sell their bodies to achieve their goals." She was the most successful and top-notch spy in the world. Thinking of the famous spies in his previous life, which one of them didn't use their bodies as a weapon? Yuan Xingzhu's delicate body trembled. How could someone as smart as her not understand what he meant? Thinking of how she had been misunderstood the first time she had taken the initiative with a man, she felt extremely wronged. Perhaps it was because of the unwillingness in her heart or the anger of being misunderstood, but she didn't let go of his hand. Instead, she bit her lip and said, "Whether you believe it or not, I will never sacrifice my body for a mission because I have the trump card of disguise. This is my pride and also my dignity." Song Qing-shu was silent. "Madam, you don't need to explain this to me." Yuan Xingzhu ignored him and continued to say, "Aside from my husband, you are the only man in this world who has touched me. Plus, my husband and I don't spend much time together. We haven't seen each other many times in the past few years." As she spoke, she suddenly blushed and thought to herself, "Why did I say all this out loud?" Song Qing-shu was also stunned. Having read countless people, he could naturally tell whether an ordinary person was telling the truth or not. Of course, a top-notch secret agent like Yuan Xingzhu might not be as easy to judge as an ordinary person. However, the two of them had been intimate before, and the blissful Zen technique he cultivated was very sensitive to yin and yang qi. Yuan Xingzhu's pure yin qi was extremely dense. If she didn't control her private life, she definitely wouldn't be able to accumulate such dense, pure yin qi. Therefore, he knew that she wasn't lying. "I'm sorry, I lost my composure. Forgive me for not being able to stand up and send you off," Yuan Xingzhu said desolately in such a situation. The natural restraint of women made Yuan Xingzhu a little embarrassed. Who would have thought that Song Qing-shu would turn around and say, "I was impolite just now and caused madam's clothes to be wet. To make amends, I will carry madam back to the bed." Suddenly, Yuan Xingzhu's somewhat pale cheeks seemed to be stained with blood. She let out an almost inaudible hum. At the same time, she secretly cursed herself for being useless. She was the one who had invited him. Why was she so embarrassed when the matter came to a head? Hearing her promise, Song Qing-shu smiled and bent down to pick her up from the wooden barrel. Her body was so soft that it felt boneless. He couldn't help but sigh at how her body displayed the softness and beauty of a woman to the extreme. Yuan Xingzhu also had mixed feelings. Although she was mature enough, how could she be as calm as she usually was when she was being carried in the arms of a man? Reason told her that she was playing with fire, but the throbbing in her heart kept pounding against her. She couldn't help but have impudent thoughts and expectations. He carried her to the bed. Just as he was about to put her down, Yuan Xingzhu stopped him. "Don't. My body is wet. Putting me on the bed will dirty it. Take a towel and help me wipe it." Song Qing-shu couldn't help but reveal a playful expression. "Madam, you're playing with fire. Ruan Xingzhu lowered her head, so her expression couldn't be seen. He could only hear her faintly say, "I'm a woman, but I'm not afraid. Gongzi is a man, so what is there to be afraid of? Since Madam has an order, Song Mao will naturally obey." Song Qingshu smiled. He stretched out his hand and took a clean towel from nearby. He gently wiped the watermarks on her body from her bath and put her down on the bed. He wanted to cover her with a brocade quilt, but he didn't know why he was reluctant to do so. "Do I look good?" Ruan Xingzhu's eyes were misty. She looked at him with a bit of anticipation and nervousness. She had skin that even a young girl couldn't compare to. Her entire body was as smooth and delicate as milk. Her eyes were as dazzling and enchanting as the stars. Time didn't leave a single trace on her body. Her waist was slender and soft, as if he could hold it with a single hand. Her plump and slender thighs were so beautiful that they made his mouth go dry. "You look good," Song Qingshu answered honestly. At the same time, he couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Her husband was actually able to live apart from such a beautiful wife for so many years. He didn't know what he was thinking. It was truly a reckless waste of God's gift. "It's a pity that I couldn't serve Gongzi with my true appearance last night." Ruan Xingzhu's alluring red lips parted. She wanted to say something, but stopped. Song Qingshu was an old pedant who had a pure heart and few desires. In this situation, the woman had already expressed enough. If he continued to play dumb, even he would look down on himself. "It's true that I have many regrets without swallowing my feelings. It just so happens that today is a beautiful day. Why don't you let me have a good taste?" Feeling the other party holding his hand, Song Qingshu smiled and conveniently lay down. The next day, Ruan Xingzhu didn't wake up early to deal with business as usual. She slept all the way until the sun was high in the sky. She subconsciously touched her side and discovered that it was already empty. She couldn't help but spit, running away after playing. What a heartless person. Originally, she was a little apprehensive about her decision yesterday. But now, she was completely satisfied and had no regrets. After all, most of the time, reason was useful. But the impulse of a whim was even more irresistible. No wonder the boudoirs of Jiangnan all say that he's the perfect lover. He's handsome, and his martial arts are incomparably powerful. No matter what kind of martial arts he has, he's powerful. Thinking of her shameful parts, she blushed like a little girl. She hugged the brocade quilt and rolled around, as if a great secret had been discovered. Just as she was putting on her clothes, the maid Pearl came in with a basin of water. She knocked on the door and walked in. "Madam, you're awake." "Eh, what's that smell?" The maid's words caused Ruan Xingzhu's face to turn red. Of course, she knew what was going on. It was the smell of an intense night of battle. She hurriedly ordered, "Open the window and let some air in." "Okay." Pearl placed the water beside the dressing table and ran over to open the window. She said in surprise, "Madam's complexion is so good today. Your skin is so white and rosy." Pearl is envious. "Really?" Ruan Xingzhu ran to the side of the mirror and began to look at herself. Unlike the blurry bronze mirrors that most people used in this era, she used a glass mirror that she had obtained from a merchant in Venice. After all, they were the #1 imperial merchant in the world. Even though they didn't specialize in overseas trade, they still had channels to obtain some Western goods. However, this kind of mirror was too difficult to make and was extremely precious. She only had this one. Looking at the beautiful woman in the mirror, Ruan Xingzhu was a little surprised. She originally thought that after staying up late last night, she would have dark circles under her eyes. She didn't think that her complexion would be so good. Could it be that the man's thing was a great supplement? As soon as this thought appeared, Ruan Xingzhu hurriedly spat. "What's wrong, madam?" Pearl heard the commotion and turned around. "What's wrong, madam?" "It's nothing." Perhaps it was because she was thinking about the scene from last night, but Ruan Xingzhu felt her entire body go soft. She was afraid that Pearl would notice something was wrong, so she quickly changed the topic. "That's right, we're Prince Song and Miss Ren. They woke up early in the morning and were playing the guqin on the deck." Pearl couldn't help but sigh with envy. One of them plays the guqin and the other dances with a sword. They really are a match made in heaven. Ruan Xingzhu usually made similar size, but hearing these words today, she couldn't help but feel a little depressed. After all, no matter which woman it was, if the man ran off to another woman the next day, they would all feel a little jealous. For the next few days, the few of them acted as if nothing had happened during the day. They chatted about all sorts of things. Ruan Xingzhu was the #1 imperial merchant in the world and had traveled extensively. Ren Yingying was the saintess of Sun Moon sect and had seen many things. Song Qingshu had the memories of 2 lives, so no matter what the topic was, he was able to answer it. After nightfall, although Ruan Xingzhu didn't take the initiative to express anything, she silently left the window ajar. Song Qingshu listened to her and understood her intentions. In order to avoid rumors, he didn't openly visit her. Often, the 2 of them wouldn't speak for an entire night, only the most primitive and intense exchanges. In the end, Ruan Xingzhu wasn't sure if she was doing this for the sake of completing the mission or for her own selfish motives. Just like that, time passed day by day. The Mirror Lake ship traveled along the river and entered the borders of Sichuan. During this time, the few of them disembarked and went to the towns along the way to ask for information. Unfortunately, the entire city of Chengdu only allowed entry but not exit. No information could be transmitted out. As a result, the current situation in Chengdu had many different opinions, and no one knew what was going on. Under normal circumstances, with the influence of the Ruan and Yang families in Sichuan, Ruan Xingzhu could openly bring Emperor Liang's treasure to Chengdu and then come out. However, due to the current situation in Chengdu, she didn't dare to take the risk. Finally, after a discussion, the few of them decided to stop the Mirror Lake ship in a small city dozens of miles away from Chengdu. With the stronghold of the Ruan family here, they didn't need to worry about the safety of the Mirror Lake ship for the time being. Shortly after, Ruan Xingzhu brought along a few carefully selected trusted subordinates and followed Song Qingshu and Ren Yingying into Chengdu City. In order to avoid their identities being exposed and alerted, the few of them had changed their attire in advance. Whether it was Ruan Xingzhu or Song Qingshu, both of them were grandmasters in disguise. At present, even those who were familiar with them wouldn't be able to recognize them. Chapter 1697. Yang Zhinzhong. Why does this name sound so familiar? Song Qingshu suddenly thought of something and subconsciously glanced at the woman on the other side. Ruan Xingzhu's delicate body also trembled, and she subconsciously stopped in her tracks. Although the change in her expression could not be seen clearly because of the disguise, it was obvious that her heart was in turmoil. "Let's go in and have a seat," Ren Yingying suggested considerately, knowing that the other party wanted to know what was going on. Ruan Xingzhu glanced at her gratefully. Then the group entered the restaurant and walked upstairs to the place where the voice had just come from. Although the entire Chengdu city had been sealed off, the inside of the city was not affected too much. It still maintained its prosperity, and any random restaurant by the road was also bustling. After going upstairs, a group of people gathered around a table and chatted while drinking. The voice just now had obviously come from one of them. Den Army's Yang Zhinzhong has always had prestige in Sichuan. It's normal for Wu Shi to want to rope him in. General Yang is really a man of iron bones. He would rather die than follow that traitor Wu Shi and commit treason. I feel that his death was not worth it. The Yang family has such a deep foundation in Sichuan. Now that the country is in trouble, he should have stood up and led everyone to suppress that dog Wu Shi. In the end, he died. It's really painful for the close ones and happy for the enemy. After confirming her husband's death, Ruan Xingzhu's body swayed. If it wasn't for Song Qingshu's sharp eyes and quick hands supporting her waist, she would have fallen to the ground. Although she said that she had no feelings for him, the two of them were husband and wife. In this era, the husband was the backbone of a woman. Although Ruan Xingzhu was not an ordinary person, she was still a woman. Song Qingshu also frowned when he heard this. If Wu Shi really committed treason, why could this group of people openly discuss political affairs in the restaurant? Was it because Wu Shi's control over Sichuan was far from enough? or were these people not afraid of death? But no matter what the situation was, it could be seen that the hearts of the people were aligned. Even though the Southern Song dynasty was weak and muddle-headed, it was still a righteous cause in the hearts of the majority of the Han people. In the future, if there was a conflict with the Southern Song dynasty, they must not neglect this point, lest they inadvertently become the common enemy of the Han people. Ruan Xingzhu tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Just as she was about to step forward and ask about the details, a timid and stubborn voice came from the side. "Nonsense, Ling. General Wu is a great hero with an indomitable spirit. How could he do such a thing?" Everyone looked toward the direction of the voice, and their eyes suddenly brightened. A young nun was sitting at the table in the corner. She was delicate and pretty. Her countenance was dazzling. She was indeed a peerless beauty. She was about 16 or 17 years old and had a graceful figure. Although she was wrapped in a loose black robe, it could not hide her graceful figure. Beside him sat a valiant man with a fierce face. However, he was dressed like an ascetic monk, which made him look a little out of place. A nun paired with a monk. What kind of situation is this? Many people had the same doubt in their hearts. Song Qingshu could roughly guess the identity of these two people. That valiant man was a famous rapist in the pugilistic world, Tian Boguang. Song Qingshu had met him once before, but looking at his monk's attire, it was most likely that he had been cut off by the monk Bujia. When he thought about how Tian Boguang looked so manly on the outside, but in truth he was no longer a real man, Song Qingshu couldn't help but have a strange expression on his face. That monk Bujia was truly ruthless enough. As for this delicate and pretty little nun, she was naturally the character that the vast majority of readers into the smiling, proud wanderer Yilin. No wonder a rapist like Tian Boguang would fall head over heels for her. As expected, I can't help but feel pity for her. Although Song Qingshu approved of her looks, he had no other thoughts. He had no interest in a nun, especially that little bald head of hers. It completely didn't meet the standard of a woman with long hair that flowed like a waterfall. The moment you meet a nun, you will definitely lose every bet. No wonder Ling Huchong said such a thing back then. It was most likely because he didn't appreciate nuns. Hence, even though he knew that Yilin was deeply in love with him, he chose to ignore her. On the contrary, when he met Rin Yingying, he immediately fell in love with her. Oh no, this time I meet a nun. Am I going to be unlucky as well? Song Qingshu's eyebrows twitched. One must know that although the phrase, "the moment you meet a nun, you will definitely lose every bet," sounded like a joke, but in the smiling, proud wanderer, it had a huge magical effect. In the original work, during the Hingyang Grand Assembly, after Abbess Ding Yi heard Lin's narration, she said, "What, the moment you meet a nun, you will definitely lose every bet." That's all nonsense. How can anyone believe that? There are so many people here who have seen us, master and disciple. Are they all unlucky? Then some netizens made a magical summary of the people who were present at that time and mentioned their names. First was the master, Lu Zhengfeng, who was exterminated not long after. Taoist Tianmen of Taishan sect died suddenly at the Song Mountain Assembly. Qingcheng sect was almost exterminated by Lin Pingzhi. The main figures of Huashan sect at that time were Lin Pingzhi, Yu Lingshan, Lao Dun'aw, and Liang Fa. Lin Pingzhi was imprisoned at the bottom of West Lake. Lao Dun'aw was chained together with two monkeys. Yu Lingshan was killed by Lin Pingzhi, and Liang Fa was beheaded. Ding Yinun herself was killed by Yu Buqian, and Yilin suffered the pain of lovesickness alone. Ling Huchong also narrowly escaped death in order to save her. After that, his fate was even more difficult, and he had experienced all the bitterness of the human world. Therefore, this sentence was really poisonous, and it was better not to raise some flags randomly. While Song Qingshu was thinking about it, the group of people had already begun to refute. "Little nun, you are not from here, right? Who in Sichuan doesn't know that Wu Shi is a traitor?" Originally, when everyone heard someone say good things about Wu Shi, they were about to fly into a rage, but found that the other party was a delicate little nun, so they couldn't help but have a good impression of her, and their anger naturally subsided a little. Tears rolled down Elin's beautiful eyes, and she was about to cry out. Although I'm not from here, I know that General Wu is definitely not a traitor, definitely not. Song Qing-shu was puzzled when he heard this. Looking at Elin's appearance, it was obvious that she knew that she was Ling Hu Chong, but shouldn't this matter be extremely secretive? Suddenly, he came to a realization. According to the plot, when the Hongshan sect was robbed by the Song Mountain sect, disguised as the people of the devil cult, Ling Hu Chong's Wu Tian saved them. At that time, the whole Hongshan sect should have known Ling Hu Chong's identity. Forget it. If it weren't for the fact that you are an ignorant little nun, we would definitely not spare you for speaking up for that traitor. The group of people saw that she looked pitiful and cute, so they couldn't bear to scold her. They just ignored her and continued to chat. Elin opened her mouth and wanted to defend her sweetheart, but Tian Boguang, who was next to her, pulled the corner of her clothes and lowered his voice to stop her. We just came here, so we don't know anything. Let's listen to the situation first. On the other side, Reningyin couldn't help but sigh. Elin really likes Ling Hu Chong. Song Qing-shu deliberately sighed. Unfortunately, the one Ling Hu Chong likes is Blackwood Cliff's Miss Run. Reningyin was so embarrassed that she pinched him and then said, "This kind of joke is not funny, and the person he likes is his little junior sister." Song Qing-shu nodded, obviously agreeing with her. In the original work, although Ling Hu Chong was amazed by Ren Yingying at the beginning and was also very moved by her behavior, in his heart, he still loved his little junior sister Yulingshan. Only after the two of them experienced a series of things in the middle and late stages of the novel did he love Ren Yingying more and more. However, whether he liked Ren Yingying or Yulingshan more, even at the end, was still controversial. Now in this world, because of Song Qing-shu's interference, the relationship between the two of them had not had time to develop as perfectly as in the original work, so he had a chance to take advantage of it. Before, outside Yangzhou City, when Song Qing-shu was poisoned by the golden ripple flower and was unable to resist, it was through Yulingshan that he persuaded Ling Hu Chong, which also explained some problems. At this time, the people at the table began to talk again, each of them filled with righteous indignation. Wu Shi, that dog, betrayed the country for glory, but in addition to Yang Zhenzhong, there are still many hot-blooded men in the officialdom. Yes, Chen Xian, who is in charge of strategy and writing, shaved his head and refused to submit to the Jin dynasty. I also heard that the official in charge of writing in Lizhou Road, Shi Ziqin, blinded his eyes and refused to be a false official appointed by Wu Shi. After listening for a while, Song Qing-shu could not help but be secretly shocked. Wu Shi previously secretly communicated with the Jin dynasty. This matter should be extremely confidential and could not have been leaked. How did all these people know that he wanted to surrender to the Jin dynasty and make himself the king of Shu? No wonder Chengdu was sealed, and most of the other provinces and counties in Sichuan were also watching. Many people originally did not want to obey Wu Shi, but after hearing the news of the defeat of the Southern Song dynasty, they probably had a lot of ideas. In addition, Wu Shi originally controlled more than half of the military power in Sichuan, so the situation was out of control. At this time, the people at the other table also slammed the table and stood up. These are all loyal martyrs. Let me tell you about a person who is greedy for life and afraid of death. Hearing this, Song Qing-shu's heart skipped a beat. He could not be talking about Lin Pingji, could he? Song Qing-shu had used his connections to send Lin Pingji here, and it would not look good for him to make a traitor. The ancestor of the Murong family of Gusu is the sworn brother of the founder, Murong Yinzhao, the commandery prince of Hunan. He has been loyal for generations and has a great reputation in Jianghu. Xiaofeng of the north, Murong of the south, such great prestige. This time, as the transport envoy, everyone expected Murong Fu to stand out and lead the people to rebel, but he was the first to accept Wu Shi's false appointment and become the prime minister and chief clerk. Bah! That person said with righteous indignation. Song Qing-shu thought that with Murong Fu's determination to restore the country, It was indeed easy for him to participate in Wu Shi's betrayal. Now, the only thing he was not clear about was why Ling Huchong betrayed the country. Looking at Yuan Xingzhu, who was at the side, and seeing that her eyes were lifeless, Song Qingshu sighed and walked to the side to ask about Yang Zhenzhong on her behalf. In the end, he confirmed the news of Yang Zhenzhong's death. When he came back, he could only say to her, "The deceased has passed away. My condolences, madam." Yuan Xingzhu shook her head. How could he commit suicide? I don't believe it. I want to go back to the Yang family. Although Yang Zhenzhong held a position in Xingyuan Mansion, the Yang family was in Chengdu. Song Qingshu said awkwardly, I also want to see what happened to Wu Shi. I may not be able to accompany Madam back to the Yang family. This was the reason why he came to Sichuan this time, and Ren Yingying had been worried about this. At this time, it was unlikely that he would change his plan for another woman. Chapter 1698. Song Qingshu was stunned for a moment before he realized what she meant. It must be that the two of them on the bed. No, the romantic time on the boat was nothing, but now that her husband had died, she couldn't help but feel a little guilty, so she instinctively didn't want him to go with her. The goods on the Mirror Lake are safe for the time being. After dealing with things here, I will come to you and send the goods to Yangzhou as promised. After saying goodbye to him, Yuan Xingzhu stood up and left with the people of the Yuan family. Song Qingshu was not worried. Not to mention that Yuan Xingzhu was under the life and death spell. He had also found time to control some of the backbone members of the Yuan family. Therefore, even if Yuan Xingzhu risked her life, she couldn't take Liang Yuandi's treasures. At the same time, after entering Sichuan, he asked Ren Yingying to mobilize some people of the Sun-Moon sect to keep an eye on the Mirror Lake. If there was any abnormal movement, they would get the news. Of course, after the rapid progress during this time, Song Qingshu didn't think that Yuan Xingzhu would take this opportunity to betray him. As the saying went, everything was done. Although they weren't in love, they had some feelings for each other. Looking at the backs of the Yuan family members leaving, Ren Yingying couldn't help but say, Song Qingshu, are you really not going to help her? If I go, her husband won't come back to life. Why should I add to her sadness? I believe Mrs. Yuan can handle the affairs of the Yang family by herself. Song Qingshu took her hand and said softly, I came to Sichuan for you, not for her. Ren Yingying blushed. Although she was a little shy, she felt more sweet in her heart. I just asked about Lin Pingji. I heard that he abandoned his position and left. He probably went to find you to Shanghai for revenge. A trace of worry flashed on Song Qingshu's face. Although Lin Pingji's swordsmanship improved greatly after he taught him the 5-mountain godly sword, he didn't have much time to practice. This kind of righteous martial arts focused on accumulation, so he might not be able to help him succeed in revenge in a short time, like the Bishia sword book. Moreover, his internal force cultivation had always been his weakness. Qingchang sect was a sect that had been passed down for thousands of years. If he went alone, he probably wouldn't be able to take revenge. That misuse should be accompanying him. Moreover, I don't think Lin Pingji is a reckless person. If he doesn't have absolute confidence, he won't make a move. Ren Yingying explained. Song Qingshu nodded. I hope so. With so many things to deal with here, he couldn't make a special trip to Qingqing Mountain. At this time, Yilin and Tian Boguang, who were in a distant corner, saw that the people at the table were talking about the same things over and over again. They knew that they wouldn't hear any new news, so they stood up and left. Ren Yingying tugged at her lover's sleeve. Let's follow them and see if Yilin and the others have any information. Song Qingshu nodded. All right. He was also curious as to why these two would appear here. On the other hand, Yuan Xingzhu anxiously returned to the Yang family's mansion. At first, she was still holding on to a glimmer of hope. However, when she saw the white cloth hanging at the entrance, her entire body softened. Pearl hurriedly supported her. My condolences, madam. Even though the people of the Yuan family didn't have deep feelings for this son-in-law, he was still the son-in-law. Thinking that their madam would become a widow in the future, They all felt sympathy for him. After a long time, Wan Xingzhu calmed down and took a deep breath. "Let's go in first." As they walked in, the sound of sobbing could be heard. At this time, the servants of the Yang family noticed them and couldn't help but cry out in surprise. "Madam is back, madam." Halfway through, they suddenly remembered that their master was gone. Where did the joy come from? Ruan Xingzhu was no longer in the mood to deal with these servants. She quickly walked towards the main hall with a straight face. She saw that it had already been turned into a mourning hall. All sorts of Taoists and the like were performing rituals at the side. In front of the mourning hall, some women were crying and kneeling in a circle. Ruan Xingzhu glanced at them and recognized that they were all her husband's concubines. It should be known that the two of them only had a political marriage and had been separated for a long time. Ruan Xingzhu was unable to fulfill her duties as a wife. She also felt somewhat guilty in her heart, so she turned a blind eye to the matter of him taking in concubines. "Sister, madam," when the group of women saw her, they all rushed over and began to cry. The mournful atmosphere made Ruan Xingzhu's eyes start to turn red. However, she was a woman who had experienced great storms and waves after all. Very quickly, she collected her emotions. "When did Master pass away?" "About 5 days ago, when we received Wu Shi's conscription letter." One of the concubines couldn't finish her sentence and was already sobbing. The reason why she was so sad was partly because of Yang Zhenjiang, and partly because she was afraid of the future. The fate of women in this world was already rough. After losing their husband as a backer, their fate for the rest of their lives could be imagined. "Where's Master's body? I want to see it," Ruan Xingzhu suddenly said. Another person pointed at the coffin at the back of the mourning hall. "After Master's accident, we hastily collected his body and transported it back to Chengdu. We planned to bury him in the ancestral grave. Originally, we had sent someone to inform Madam, but with the chaos of war, we most likely wouldn't be able to find Madam for a while. I didn't expect Madam to return so soon. I just happened to come to Sichuan to do something," Ruan Xingzhu answered casually. She walked to the back of the mourning hall and gently stroked the shiny black coffin. Thinking of the marriage alliance years ago, she had married into Sichuan with a heart full of apprehension. Thinking of how, although they were far apart these years, they could still be considered to be respectful to each other. Humans were not plants and trees, so how could they be emotionless? Unknowingly, a layer of mist appeared in her eyes. A stream of tears rolled down her fair cheeks like pearls from a broken necklace. "Zhenjiang, I didn't expect that I wouldn't even be able to see you for the last time." After crying for a long time, she suddenly said, "Has the coffin been sealed? Find someone to open the coffin. I want to see Master." As soon as this sentence came out, apart from the concubines, even the Yang family instantly burst into an uproar. "Madam, you can't do that. How can we open the coffin? Won't this disturb Master's rest? Opening the coffin will be very inauspicious." Ruan Xingzhu knew that it was a taboo to open the coffin in this society. If she was in the Ruan family, she could stand up against the opinions of the masses. However, she was now in the Yang family. Moreover, there were already many people in the Yang family who were somewhat critical of her behavior of showing her face outside. Now that her husband was dead, who would listen to her? Second uncle? Where is second uncle? Ruan Xingzhu knew that she couldn't explain things clearly to these people, so she could only pin her hopes on her husband's brother. The two brothers were the ones in charge of the entire Yang family. Although the patriarch was her husband, Yang Zhenjiang, Yang Jiyuan also had great power. The two of them helped each other in the officialdom, and many matters in the family were decided by the two brothers after discussion. Yang Jiyuan was a local official, so his experience was naturally not comparable to that of ordinary family members. Right now, Ruan Xingzhu had some doubts in her heart. She believed that only second uncle could stand on her side now. Second master has been keeping watch here for the whole night. He's currently resting in the study. Someone immediately answered after hearing her question. Ruan Xingzhu nodded and turned to walk towards the study. When she was about to reach it, Yang Jiyuan had already received the news and came out to welcome her. "Sister-in-law, you're finally back." Yang Jiyuan was about 10 years younger than her husband, but he had the calmness of mingling in the officialdom. Coupled with his dignified appearance, Yang Zhenzhong had often praised this capable younger brother of his when he was alive, believing him to be the hope of the family. If I had come back a few days earlier, this might not have been the result. Wan Xingzhu was also filled with guilt. This matter can't be blamed on Madam. It can only be said that this is fate. However, when Big Brother knows that you're back, he will definitely be smiling in the underworld. Yang Jiwen comforted her while inviting her into the study. At the same time, he personally poured a cup of tea for her. Right. Speaking of which, sister-in-law has something to ask of you, Wan Xingzhu suddenly said. Yang Jin sternly replied, now that Big Brother has unfortunately passed away, sister-in-law's matter is my matter. If you have any requests, feel free to tell me. As long as Jiyuan can do it, I will definitely not refuse. Wan Xingzhu frowned slightly. She felt that his words sounded strange, but she couldn't tell what was strange. In addition, she was in a hurry to open the coffin, so she didn't think too much about it. She continued to say, I want to open the coffin and take a look at your big brother. Yang Jiyuan couldn't help but frown. Opening the coffin is not a small matter. Why would sister-in-law have this idea? Wan Xingzhu explained, I know your big brother's personality. Although he is somewhat dull, he is not a reckless person. Even if he was unwilling to accept Wuxi's appointment, it is unlikely that he would make such an extreme choice as suicide. There was another reason that she didn't say. Although they spent more time apart than together, she knew her husband's affection for her. She knew that he would not be willing to abandon her like this. Yang Jiyuan was shocked. Sister-in-law, what do you mean? Wan Xingzhu pondered for a moment before saying, I suspect that your big brother did not commit suicide. Then who killed him? Yang Jiyuan slammed the table and stood up. Clearly, he was extremely agitated when he suddenly heard this news. I only have a suspicion. I'm not very sure, so I need to open the coffin and examine his body. Wan Xingzhu suddenly thought of something. Right, I heard that you were the one who buried your big brother. Did you notice anything unusual at the time? Yang Jiyuan shook his head. I didn't notice anything unusual at the time. Maybe I was too sad at the time and didn't pay attention to anything else. Is that so? Wan Xingzhu was a little disappointed and began to think. But I also feel that Big Brother can't die without knowing why. Yang Jin pondered for a moment, then said resolutely, I support opening the coffin and examining the body. That's great, but the people from Yang family. Wan Xingzhu was very experienced. She knew that this matter would be very difficult to handle. Yang Jun also frowned and said, those people are indeed a problem. You should know that the people here have always believed that opening the coffin is not a good thing. If we open the coffin publicly, I'm afraid it will cause a huge uproar, and we may not succeed. Why don't we open the coffin and examine the body secretly in the middle of the night? This way, we won't alarm the people in the family and should be able to minimize the impact. Wan Xingzhu nodded. That's good. In fact, she had thought of a similar idea just now, but it was impossible for her to do it alone. Now that she had Yang Jiyuan's help, it was naturally different. Sister-in-law, I need to make some arrangements first. I need to see how we can send the people on night watch away at night to make some time, Yang Jiyuan said. Okay, I'll go change into morning clothes first, then go to the morning hall to pay my respects to your big brother. Wan Xingzhu revealed a bitter smile and quickly left with a heavy heart. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.